Welcome back to the podcast. This is Alex Howell, and today we recorded episode 13 with Kristen Henning, who I knew from back in the day as Kristen Janke before she was married. She has stacked up quite the list of degrees since we both graduated in 2007 from State Fair Community College with Associate of Arts in Speech and Theater. She has a BFA in Theater Performance from the University of Central Missouri, an MA in Theater from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, an MA in Speech Communication from the University of Central Missouri, and she is currently a Student Success Navigator and Adjunct faculty for the community college we both went to, State Fair Community College. She's from Urbana, Missouri, and went to Skyline High. And to give you a sense of who Kristen is and how I've known her for so long, we both came into State Fair Community College as speech and theater majors in 2005, and when we graduated in 2007, and then especially up until now, she has consistently always been this kind-hearted, good human being, and it feels very rare to find people like that just throughout their entire lives, throughout their careers, throughout, their relationships, throughout, obviously she became a mother. Every step along the way, the one word that I would always use to describe Kristen would be kind. She's always been kind, and throughout this interview, you'll kind of hear a theme about what her plans are for the future, and she wants to take over a position, I believe it was episode 10 with Eric Gazel, that he currently fills, and he'll be leaving soon. And we talked about it on that podcast. We talk about it a lot on this podcast, and it's the worst kept secret in the world that she wants this position. But I will tell you this: if I were standing in front of any administrator from any school discussing Kristen and her future with that school, I would say that if you decided that you wanted to have somebody there that represented you well, that students worked with well, you'd be a damn fool to ever think of somebody else that wasn't named Kristen Henning. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. She is just always been such a great person. We've been in communication since we both graduated from State Fair Community College. Our lives took different paths, but to have this conversation, and especially to have it last as long as it did, was just awesome. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this 3-hour podcast where two good friends talk about our time back in the day, talk about our future plans, and just kind of catch up on things that have gone on. I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks again for listening. Episode 13, Kristen Henning, who I know as Kristen Janke. Probably just have you talk in. Mm-hmm. You do have to kind of stay close to it too. Okay. So and then you get used to it pretty fast.
Oh, okay. Yep. I hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
It makes it pretty easy.
I'm going to turn this around a little.
Sounds good.
I'm afraid I'm going to pull the wire and then topple everything. Okay.
No, it's honestly fine. Definitely unwrap that. But
okay.
And you can pull that a little bit to give you something. But yeah, when the last guy that I had on here was Corey, and he's the one that put the mic like that. Because it was like this, but it kept dropping, and you can see that I've secured mine. But he basically said, he's like, I'm just going to mess with this because this is driving me nuts, and he found a way to make it work.
I didn't know that works.
Yeah, mine's a little bit looser than that one is, so I can't make it work like that. So I just had to tie mine up with string. One of these days, I need to get new booms, and then I'll solve that problem.
Okay.
But yeah. One thing that drove me nuts, and I've said this several times, so anybody that's listening to the podcast is probably like, dude, shut the fuck up about Game of Thrones. But I seriously, it was driving me absolutely insane because I'm part of all these forums and Facebook groups because, again, I'm obsessed. And all the people that were like, Season 8 was awful. It's like, how do you clean that whole thing up? Like, I can understand getting mad at a couple of things. Like, obviously, that's going to happen every season. It's going to happen every episode.
Right.
But to clean up everything in 8 episodes that are between 60 and 95 minutes, how the hell do you think you're going to do it?
Right. And Nick and I were talking about that too. So we were watching it and waiting, like, what are people really mad about? We're like waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
And we're guessing that it was when she flipped and decided to just go crazy on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's when people are mad because they're like, that's not what Danny would do.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, that's not Danny would do in your own mind.
Exactly.
But, like, I can absolutely see where she was coming from, all this leading up because, you know, finding out that John was her nephew, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and then, like, well, great. Every single thing that I have worked towards in my entire life that I've known is going to be taken away by a man who didn't even know that he was supposed to get this.
Right.
You know, so I can absolutely see that train of thought, and it's like, well, screw it.
Yeah.
You know, if this is how it's going to be, screw it. And then it actually worked out for her, and then she thought, okay, well, I've won. But then, you know, when you're not okay with just winning and still conquering, like, I mean, that's where she was shooting herself.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing that, you know, the first thing I thought of when they were when people got mad about the fact that she turned into the Mad Queen was, it's like, you guys have been watching all the other episodes, right, where shit that you don't want to have happen happens, right?
Right.
So we know that, but I think a lot of it was so many people just identified with the character. And especially, I mean, I don't want to, like, make a blanket statement here, but I do think a lot of her power, a lot of her character came from, you know, kind of this very positive, like, really, like, pro-female movement that we're in.
Yes.
Like, and that to me was awesome.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I was telling Nick when we were watching this, I was like, Danny is awesome.
Oh yeah.
My God.
Yeah. And it always drove me nuts because I kept seeing, and this was something that I never understood, but I saw a lot, and it was like, you know, Game of Thrones, and they try to, like, nitpick some of the different areas. They were like, well, it's a very, it's a white-centric cast, and there are a lot of powerful males. And it was like, but you saw a transition that was pretty damn impressive over the series. And it's like, well, one, as far as the white-centric thing, like, this is basically Europe. That's kind of the land that we're basing everything in.
Right.
But two, like, with the female thing, it's like, have you watched it? Do you know who Cersei Lannister is?
Yeah. I mean, there's some really kick-ass female characters, and they are written so complex, and they interact and are not just talking about men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think that they had a really nice balance of you know, they had to establish what is established now to where we can see, like, oh, that's what this... You know, I'm relating real life to this show, and then you're seeing the rise of. I mean, it all made sense to me. Yeah.
I just thought it was. To me, it's without question. Like, you know, I personally think it's the best show ever, but I know I'm completely fucking biased because it's everything I like. It's Lord of the Rings with, you know, more fighting and sex. Like, fantastic. But when you really look at the writing, I mean, you were talking about it earlier. It's like when you see it from the mind of somebody, you know, we weren't part of creating it, but we've been around, like, in theater in some way, shape, or form for a while now. But when you know what goes into creating, like, a high school or college play,
right,
and then you see that, and then especially when you
beautiful.
see, like, that thing behind the scenes where they went through just the last season, and they're talking about 55 days of shooting the Battle of Winterfell at night in the cold with fake snow, and you're just like, dude, I'm gonna stick to college theater. This is bullshit.
That's way out of my league. Like, I am gonna stick to theater because film. I feel like film is way too grand for me. It's almost like too big of a concept.
Yeah.
That I don't know how I would be able to pull all these things together. I feel like I can do that well in theater, but I don't know if I could do that in film. And that's okay. That's not my niche. That's someone else's niche.
Yeah. And I think I would just emotionally fall apart.
Yeah.
Like when you're basically not allowed to see the sun for 55 days, that can't be healthy.
No, not at all. Oh my God, no. Yeah, I think we haven't watched the behind the scenes thing.
Oh,
yet.
okay. Yeah.
Tim Wells told me
to
do that. He's like, after you get done, make sure to watch that. And we just haven't got to it.
Huge surprise that Tim would appreciate that.
Right. Tim was like he would talk about it a lot, but not like spoiler or anything like that. And so that's part of the reason I was like, I want to watch this. Now I have something else I could talk to Tim about.
Yeah.
You know? Not that I don't talk. We talk all the time.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah.
It's not that big of a deal.
No, I
but
understand.
now I'm like, ooh, now I can relate to someone on this level too.
Yeah, Tim is. I was telling Eric this. It's like he's always cracked me up because he has so much wit with a ridiculously dry sense of humor.
Heck yeah.
And it's awesome. Like the amount of times that we'd give him shit behind the scenes and he would just turn it back around on us. It was like, fuck.
Nah, man.
You win.
Yeah.
I remember I thought I was cool and I had I bought like a Zippo lighter and I thought I was cool behind the scenes. I was like, yeah, because I'm 19 and stupid. Like, pts, pts. And I just heard him like, whoever's got the Zippo lighter, shut up. Like,
okay.
I just remember I was like,
anything.
Sorry. Like, he's going to know exactly who it is, but I'm at least going to try to fake it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Save your own your own self inside just a little bit, even
Just-
though
yeah.
he knows,
Oh, yeah.
but you tried.
Well, and he's got, I mean, when you're a director, I think you get x-ray vision. You know what's happening. Like, especially
Yes.
with, when you've been behind the scenes anyway, especially when
Right.
you've been an actor or anything else. It's like, you know what's happening back
Yeah.
there. It's just, you also have to balance that with calling people out. Like, and with me, he probably knew. He was like, that fucking idiot. God damn it.
Alex, again, with the Zippo lighter.
There he goes.
Okay.
He doesn't even smoke. He's just trying to be James Dean. What an idiot. Yeah.
Well, we had enough people who smoked at that point, so it could have been any number of people,
Oh,
or
my
maybe
God.
you're just trying to be cool and light their cigarettes for them.
Yeah, here's how cool I was with that stupid thing. So the whole like you flick it open and then you start
Yep.
it, go on your leg. So those jeans that were all ripped up were popular. Remember, I had like
Oh,
50
yeah.
of them.
Yes, I remember
The first
those.
time I did it, I lit my jeans on fire.
Oh my God.
That's how cool I am.
Oh
I'm
my
sitting there, I was like,
God.
"Pts, pts, pts, pts," and all of a sudden I'm like, oh God. Had to hit it to get it out. It was like, oh, you think you're cool in life, and then you have a moment like that, and you're like, nah, I'm.
It humbles you. It
Oh,
brings
yeah.
you back down to earth. Yeah.
Yeah, I pray people like Brad Pitt have moments like that too.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
It's like, I'm Brad Pitt. I'm awesome. Oh, I lit my jeans on fire. I'm not as awesome as I
that's
thought.
cool. How'd you light those on fire, Alex? Oh,
I was playing with a Zippo lighter, thinking I was pretty cool.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Social media wasn't what it is now, and so it probably saved you from having a video posted on Facebook
Oh, I'm
or
sure.
on YouTube, becoming the viral sensation.
Yeah. Well, between that and that stupid video that me, Trevor, and Chris Buchanan made, like, thank God, like,
Oh, my
MySpace
gosh.
was popular, and that was on a camcorder. I mean,
Yes.
at this point in my life, I'm 32. I have 2 kids. There's not a lot that's going to embarrass me, but I'm just happy that hasn't hit the internet quite yet.
Well, here's something funny. So Ryan Russell,
Yeah.
he at one point I needed to get everything off of my computer because my computer was slowly like going away.
Yeah.
Is that-
Oh yeah, I think it's just going to screensaver.
Oh, okay. I
You're
was
good.
like, did it die?
That'd be fun. No, it's still recording. We're
okay,
good.
cool. Sorry, but anyway, so my computer was getting slower and slower, and so I was like, "Hey, Ryan, can you help me save all my stuff on an external hard drive?"
Yeah.
He did, and anyway, then it was gone for a while. I don't know what happened. Like people move.
Yeah.
He packed it up. I didn't get it right away. Forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2009.
Okay.
Okay, so fast forward to this year.
Hey, a decade.
Yes, exactly. 10 years. Yeah. So Ryan, I think it was Ryan or Shelley, one of the two. They told me that said, "Hey, I have your external hard drive from like a long time ago, and it has a bunch of State Fair pictures." And I went, "Oh my gosh!" And so we plugged it in. We got it all on my computer, and I have pictures from that video, that was, but I mean, it wasn't, it was just like pictures that we were taking while someone was recording. And I mean, oh my gosh, we were laughing so hard, not just at those, but just like at all the pictures we took and all the stupid stuff we did. And I'm like, thank God it's on MySpace and not Facebook, because that's kind of died, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and we were all idiots, so we had no idea how to upload that stuff. Like,
right, I was the
plug
uploader.
You had to plug in the USB.
Scan things in. I would scan in the pictures and then upload, and I just would keep doing that. So that's why I have so many pictures, because they're all not digital.
Oh yeah,
like they were disposable camera, and and oh my gosh. So anyway, you should look at them sometime.
I'd be happy to.
I mean, it like hit me so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about this person, and
Yeah.
I forgot about this person, and oh yeah, we did do that.
Yeah.
Good thing we weren't on Facebook. And because Facebook, you needed a college email address, and State Fair did not have college email
No,
addresses
exactly, yeah.
at the time. So I had a Facebook because I did dual credit at SMSU. That
That's
became
right.
MSU, and I had lost my SMS email address, but my best friend from high school, she gave me her old email address
Yep.
because she went to MSU and got a new one.
Nice.
And so I had one, but I was like, cool, why am I on here? No one I know is on here. So I had it since 2006, early
Yeah.
2006, yeah. And then did not actually use it until I went to UCM in late 2007.
Nice. I know. I got it. Mine says that I started in 2006 because it always says like member since this, like it's a fucking credit card. And
Right. Platinum member.
exactly. You're old. But so I got it in 2006 and I was like, but they didn't open it up. But I think when we were at State Fair, they must have opened it up to something. But
Or maybe they just got State Fair email addresses.
and they
or
might
something.
have, yeah, because I
Yeah.
remember I got it and I had it while we were at State Fair, but we never used it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
MySpace was the big thing at that point,
Right.
and Facebook hadn't opened it up to all users.
Yeah, and so
So-
we're like, well, we don't really care because
Yeah.
in high school we were using MySpace or
Yep.
whatever. Actually, I didn't technically use MySpace until I started school at State Fair.
I think that's how I was too. I think I did like AOL Instant Messenger or something, like all the weird,
I
weird
didn't have AOL, but
craziness.
for whatever reason, I don't even know if you've like heard of this Bebo.
No.
Okay,
Nope.
so that was a thing that I guess I found out about when I was in high school because Jesse
Yeah.
Shelton and I.
Oh
you know,
yeah.
we both had Bebo account. So I don't even know what that means or what it does.
All the people trying to be the next big thing, they're like, we'll call it Bebo.
Yeah, okay, so we have that. And then when I got to State Fair, like, no one obviously had ever heard of Bebo.
Yeah.
And so then we, we ended up eventually getting MySpace. And then again, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And then once people started interacting more, I was like, oh,
That's
I
why.
get the concept.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, MySpace, I don't really remember anything outside of you could have music as
Yeah.
on your profile when people came in,
Mhm.
which was always dumb because it was
Right.
like the song that I did that I liked 6 months ago is now annoying. But the other thing was the top 8, your friends.
Yes, the top 8
And
friends.
that was a huge deal.
Yes.
I just remember I can't remember who I kicked off and put like my friend JD, who's my best friend. He had gotten MySpace, and I think he got it after I did. And when he got it, I added him, but that means you have to kick somebody off because I was
Right.
like, of course he's going to be number 1.
Right.
I put him on, and the person called me. It's like, so what? Why am I not in your top 8? Like, I have no idea because they don't have 9.
Sorry.
So I finally just started telling people like, it's not a negative. It's just that you're
Yeah.
not as cool as the other 8 people.
I'm sorry you suck.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, it's not my problem, man. Yeah, it
You
was
should try to be a better friend to me. You should suck up and,
exactly. Yeah, send me
bribe me.
cookies.
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
kind of cool
yeah.
shit. Yeah, when you think about when somebody says like, when somebody would say to me when I was younger, like, well, you just haven't lived your life.
Yeah.
And then I'd get really mad. I was like, dude, I have a job. I do this. I pay taxes. What about me makes you think you shouldn't listen to me? I should just internally think about the fact that I cared so much about MySpace at the time.
Exactly.
Like, why the fuck did I care? There was no reason.
I remember my number 1 and number 2. I would switch it back and forth between Trevor and Jesse Shelton because in high
Yep.
school, Jesse and I were really good friends. I mean, we're still friends.
Yep.
But anyway, one day Jesse he was like, excuse me, why am I not your number 1? I'm like, well, I mean, because he's my boyfriend.
Yeah.
So, and he's like, well, I should be your number. I was like, okay, fine. So I switched it over and I was like, hey, Trevor, he's going to be number 1. He's like, okay. And so, like I would go through and like switch them back and forth every once in a while. I was like, okay, it's even, guys.
It was like
I mean, it's
divorced
ridiculous.
parents.
Right, exactly.
Like, well, this week you're my number 1, and the next week he'll be my number 1.
You know, I have to make everything fair, guys. I'm trying to make everyone happy and I'm failing. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's amazing to think about the stuff that you cared about back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Everything was such a big deal.
Oh, my God. Yes.
Yeah. I was watching the weird transition, but I think you'll get it. I was watching the documentary. Have you seen the one? I think it's called "I Love You Now Die." About
I have not seen it.
Okay, you know what the one I'm talking about though, with the girl that was.
I want to know. I don't know it.
I think his name was Conrad Roy, but he was the one that committed suicide, and it was the girl that kind of looks like Cara Delevingne or whatever her name is. But she was basically texting him saying, like, you should just do it.
Oh.
And then she got sentenced to 1.5 years in prison.
Oh.
And so I was watching that because I don't know any of this story. I don't know the background of it. It's not that important in my life.
Right.
And so, but I was watching this documentary, and it was really kind of weird because, here, I'm going to adjust my sun's not right in my eye.
I was going to say, I've seen it
slowly coming down the forehead, yeah. Yeah, and I've got, like, the right angle to where one thing's in the way. I just need to put something up there. But anyway, so it was really strange because you have all these adults, all these people that are, I'm talking, like, adults, like our age at minimum.
Okay.
And
super adults.
Yeah, super adults, 32 plus.
Yes.
And they're all trying to get inside the mind of, like, 14-year-olds.
Mm.
And I'm watching this documentary, and I was like, God help me if anybody ever goes back and tries to get into any of our brains at that point. Because I was a freaking psychopath at the time. Like, at 19, I was like, I'm basically like a baby at that point.
I think we all are, to be completely honest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have nothing against my students at State Fair. I think you all are wonderful if you happen to listen to this. But that 18 to 20, 21 age is such a huge transition that, your emotions in your brain are like all sorts out of whack and trying to readjust and find a new normal. Yeah. And I've seen it for years, and now but then I go back. It. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, I remember doing that. I remember thinking that.
Yeah. I
remember this and that, and so it's just very interesting to kind of piece those things together.
Yeah. Well, it's you're most of the time, like in our situation, you're away from home for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Your hormones are going absolutely insane.
Yep.
And your brain's not fully developed. Even at 18, your brain's not fully developed for another 7 years.
That's correct.
Which is more than a third of your lifetime.
And, woohoo!
Yeah, and so
let's go to college and have independence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's go to college. Let's have independence. And for some reason, you were like, you know what I want to do? I want to go back and deal with that.
Yeah. I know. It's so weird. I've had people ask me, like, why, because I want to teach college and theater and all that fun stuff. Like, oh, why don't you just do it like at high school? I'm like, because I don't think I would do well with that age group.
No.
I feel like I gel very well with this very specific age group.
Yeah.
I don't want to go any earlier than that.
Mm-hmm.
I've never wanted to. And you don't want someone who's not passionate about that age group to be teaching in that age group.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think you're well suited to it too, because you have the temperament to be able to put up. Like,
I'm a very patient person.
You're a very patient person. So I think like you have the ability to kind of look around and go like, okay, I know what's ridiculous. I know what I need to step in with and go. And I don't think there's
I try.
Well, I mean, that's all you can do in any job.
Right.
But with your particular temperament, I think that you're very well suited to that, because you can kind of look at things and say, I'm just not going to step in. Just let this play out.
I used to say early on, hey, if you have any, like if you're having issues like within the cast or something like that, just come talk to me. I will be the blah, blah, blah. And then eventually I decided, man, that really came with a lot more than I intended, and thought, well, that was stupid, and you brought that on yourself. And so I stepped back and like, hey, only bring big things to me.
I'm big picture.
Right. I'm big picture. Like your squabbles, this person doesn't like this person, and this person doesn't want to be around this person, and I don't care about that. But if it's something big, huge, Yeah, okay, bring it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll deal with it then.
You know who really likes those little issues, though, is Tim. Go talk to Tim.
Yes, Tim Wells is all about that interpersonal kind of relationships, and he's all about helping people through that. So
make sure you stop by Tim's office, especially if he's working on a big project and it's last 2 weeks before a show. Just make sure you go to him right then.
Close the door, put both of you in there, both cry.
The day I see Tim Wells cry, that's going to be a play all on its own.
No, he will never cry. He will die before he cries.
Oh, my God, I love that guy.
Me too.
I think he gave me, the only C I had at State Fair was his class because I built a table that didn't work. And it was just like, if you can't even do that in this class,
if
like
a table doesn't work,
it's like
it's not like a drawer.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold you back, but Jesus, kid, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he had the best line that I've ever heard any teacher have, and it was because it was like, I've had kids ask me if they can pay for a good grade, and I tell them the same thing. It's like, I can be bought, but I'm not cheap.
He still says it.
That's awesome. I've used that line so many times that I should probably pay him royalties for it.
Right? Yeah. Well, I'm sure he got it from someone else. Who knows? No, he actually, speaking of like the only C he got at State Fair, there's a student who just graduated, and she's like an A. Yeah. Like across the board. Got a B. Guess who gave it to her?
He's like, Alex 2.0, deal with it.
Next in the long lineage.
Yeah.
No, but he was like, well, this class is different than this class I teach, and these students still had this mindset from this class and did not, and so
that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It is what it is. It's not gonna ruin the life.
Not at all.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Especially when everything else
is perfect.
A's.
Yeah. She'll go to her next step and be like, well, that just must have been a jerk teacher.
Yeah, obviously.
Who is it, Tim Wells? Well, I'm not fucking with that guy.
No, that guy means business. I think Tim will be very honored by how much we are talking about him.
I love him.
Me too.
I always cracked up because I told this on the when Eric came on. I was talking to him about it. It was like, I've never, like, if Tim saw like the work that I did post State Fair and like all the houses that I fixed up and all the work that I've done, he probably would appreciate it, but also there would be a part of him that was like, I'm going to mark this address down. I'm never buying that fucking house. Like, that looks really good, but I also knew him back in the day. There's no way.
A little shady. I think I'll pass, a hard pass.
It's like, Tim, but I did this. It's like, yeah, sure did. Yeah. I remember and I think I said this on the Eric podcast too. I told him, I was like, came back to one of the shows, and I was like, you want me to get in there with the drill? And he was like, I'll take the drill from you. It's fine. No, we don't want you in there.
That's fine. Hey, do you want the broom?
Exactly.
Do you want what is it? I can't remember what it's called, but the metal or the
magnet. Yeah.
And everyone wants to use that.
Yeah. He wouldn't trust me with that either. He'd be like, no, you're good.
I've seen people he's trusted with the magnet. I think you'd be fine with that one.
Oh, man.
People fight over the magnet. Like, it's a big deal.
Seriously?
Oh, my God.
It's a status symbol?
Well, they are like, I just get to pick up things with a stick. I don't have to get down. I don't have to bend down and screw anything out. I don't have to carry anything. I just get a magnet stick and pick things up like a metal detector. Like, they love it. So
that might be the only tool he would trust me with even today.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fine. So what? Eric told me some of the stuff that you're that's coming up. But what are you doing at State Fair this year?
Excuse me. So I am directing the October show.
Okay.
And it's called Mr. Burns, a post-electric play by Ann Washburn. And it is, I keep saying I am terrified to do it, but I'm also super excited. Like, I chose it. No one made me do it.
Right.
But it's just going to be a really big challenge. So it's a 3-act play, which it's not like the 3-act plays of like the 1940s, like, 20s. It's not like that long, but it's a modern. It was like written in 2012 or something, so it's pretty new. But it's 3 acts, and the first act is kind of sets up the world. It is near future, post air quotes, post-apocalyptic, because the nuclear power plants of the world have somehow blown up. All this radiation is all in the air. A bunch of people, you just know a bunch of people have died, either from the radiation or from people going insane and like killing people to get food or shelter or money or whatever. So all that's going on in the background, and it's wiped out all electricity. It's never fully explained. Suspension of disbelief. So no electricity. So the first act is this group of people, and they're recounting a specific episode of The Simpsons. It is Cape Fear. Are you familiar with?
I know the episode.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, the one where Kelsey Grammer or Sideshow Bob sings HMS Pinafore, the whole thing. Yeah. So it's that episode that they're trying to recount, because really they're not doing anything. They're just sitting around a fire, telling stories, trying to, fill the time.
Yep.
And so there's always, in the first and second act, there's always this trying to think of the right word, the sense of fear and scary unknown. So, so it's not just people telling stories, it's like that, but also kind of afraid for your life, sort of thing. So that's generally the first act. The second act is 7 years later with these same exact people, but now they've created a theater company that puts together they perform episodes of The Simpsons as best they can remember them.
That's awesome.
And that is how they survive. That is how they, get food and shelter and all this stuff. So they are also competing against other theater companies who are doing Simpsons episodes, who are doing Shakespeare, who are doing XYZ. They just assume that maybe there's other TV shows that people really latched onto, maybe like The Friends or something like that.
He just called it The Friends.
The Facebook. The Friends, yeah. Yeah, you know what? I'll own it. Yeah, that's fine.
Do it. I do too.
Yeah,
I catch myself saying shit on this all the time where I'm like, yeah.
And that's not being edited out. Cool. Okay, I just got to own it. Yeah, that's right.
Hey, if you've listened to as many episodes of this as you've heard, you've probably been like, this guy can't speak English sometimes.
Honestly, it made me think, oh, thank God. Okay. I am going to be okay, because I was terrified coming on here that I was going to be like a bumbling idiot. Like, I don't know what to say, And so I was listening. I was like, okay, so this is a bit more relaxed than, like, I don't know. I always make things out to be bigger than they actually probably are. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be awful. I hope I speak well. And then I'm like, okay, so there's banter. It's relaxed. It's cool. It's fine.
100%.
I got this. Yeah. So, so that's the second act. And so there's, I won't kind of give away some of that stuff, but that's generally they're rehearsing this, and they also rehearse commercials, which is kind of cool. I will say this in the description in the front of the play. Anne Washburn, the playwright, she's writing and kind of telling the director, the people about this world, and then she says the commercials, think of them as reality porn, and I was like, okay. Yeah. And then, but she goes, but, really what this is about, the commercials are almost more important than the Simpsons episode, because it's helping people remember what used to be that they will never have again. And so really it's relishing and imagining this pleasure of what reality used to be.
Yeah, like, oh my God, we get to see commercials.
Yeah, and it was like talking about Diet Coke. Remember what a hot bath used to feel like. Things like that it's like, okay, because at first it's like, why are there commercials? And then you think about it, you're like, okay, that makes sense. So there's that. And then the third act is 75 years in the future. Same actors, completely different characters. Like the people who played in the first 2 acts, like Matt, is not existent in the third act. It's a completely new group of people, same actors. And they have, in this story, from fire telling stories to rough theater company, has now evolved into this highly polished piece of musical theater about the Simpsons Cape Fear episode. And so you're seeing in each one how the stories and the details have kind of changed across the way, and how it adapts to their current situation, reflecting on it. And so really, it's, if you think very simply, is a very long game of telephone. You know, how things are changing across the way. So I say that anyone who is a fan of The Simpsons will probably be like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But also, like me, who likes things to be correct, as I'm reading through it, I'm like, oh, that's not right. That's not, Sideshow Bob didn't do that. You know, so like so I do things like that, but I'm like, no, it's supposed to be that way. So anyway, so if you get irritated by that, sorry, it's part of the script.
Yep.
And then
and also grow a pair, because that's what theater is.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then the second part, if you like kind of post-apocalyptic kind of lore and stories, that I think that would also be of interest to you. And then if you just really like storytelling and just theater in general, it's something completely different that I haven't really seen before in a show, and I just think it's a really cool script.
That's
it's
awesome.
Again, it's terrifying. The third act is a full musical. There's not a spoken line in the entire third act, and I am.
You're going Hamilton on it.
Oh yeah. Ooh, yes, but it is not. It's going to be very exciting. I'm super stoked to go. Be More Chill that we directed, or we pocket, mouse in my pocket. Be More Chill that I directed in April actually is held for consideration at the Kennedy Center Festival. So we don't find out until December 15th, so it's kind of a long wait.
Yeah.
And then we have a month to kind of, hey, here it is. But that's being held for consideration, which means we may be chosen to take our entire production to the festival, the regional festival. So super excited about that. But also means that I have a very full fall. Yeah, because, we are freshmen and sophomores at a community college. Not saying that community college is less than anything, but we have freshmen and sophomores in the middle of Missouri that are extremely talented, but are still raw, And so we have to look at kind of maybe doing some every other week rehearsals for a bit, just to kind of get in your head. And then some people have graduated and moved on, so then hey, we'll have someone else kind of come in and take that spot, and then we have to work them into the show, and again, not focusing like we're gonna go, and then being disappointed if we don't. Like, really, and what I'm gonna tell them is like, just think of this as just a big party, because we all loved the show so much that we were really sad to see it go. It was the most heartbroken I've been for a show to be over. I was very relieved. I had my life back, got to see my son and my husband more. but it just I don't know, there was just something about the show and that group of students that just really resonated with me. And so part of me is just really excited just to revisit that again with them. And so that's exciting. So we're going to have to work with that. And then plus I'm a navigator, which is an academic advisor, but we do, like, we have to have knowledge in like financial aid and admissions and this pocket and this pocket. Not a lot, like, but just like enough to answer basic questions and then send you over here if you are wanting more information. Or, man, this financial aid issue is really out of my wheelhouse. Go talk to them.
Go talk to
I can connect
Tim.
you.
Go talk to Tim.
right. I swear, and, man, he's gonna get so many questions. It's like, where's this coming from? Out of nowhere. Why are people asking me financial aid questions? They've never done this, and I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs.
Blame Alex.
Yeah.
Like, no, he's not sitting right here. You get to answer.
Bye. I have a student appointment.
Well, I do think that and I don't know, I was kind of talking to Eric about this a little bit, and I do think that we had a very interesting group, but a very kind of once-in-a-lifetime group that went through and we did.
We really did.
Yeah, because we were tight-knit. We were always together. I made sure to like keep everybody steady. Not at all. I was no.
Everyone out there, no.
No, it's not true at all. He was awful.
No,
but I mean,
you
like,
weren't that awful.
but I felt like it. But I mean, our group was tight knit. We were together. You know, when we were in a show, there was always some type of drama. I do want to say I wasn't responsible for all of it.
No, absolutely not. You were not. You absolutely were not.
But I mean, we always had something. But the one thing that I loved about our group was when it came time to rehearse, that was what we were doing.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no question about it.
Mm-hmm. And the outliers that would try to not make it like that,
they're gone pretty quick.
They were either gone or they learned very quickly.
Yeah. And I'm glad he's not here because this would probably sound like I was trying to call him out, and I'm not at all. It's actually, to me, a compliment more than anything. But obviously, in the situation, you have to be a little bit more in the know. But I do think we were also blessed with Tim and Eric, and I think Eric he was directed more of the shows at the time. But
yeah, he always directs two.
Yeah,
Tim directs one, and then there's a guest director.
Guest director, yeah. So I think one of the things that Eric was so good at was when he was casting, it seemed like he kind of knew. He knew the show well enough. He knew the situation well enough where he could cast people in the right scenario. He could put people in the right place to know there's going to be something because it's a show. And you're asking, 18 and 19-year-olds to open up their emotions. Like, there's always going to be some shit that goes down.
And ones that always take classes together and hang out together afterwards and are also rehearsing together, and they're never really apart.
Yeah. So if we can blend this in, I think we're going to be good. And there were a couple of scenarios, and we talked about it here, but, the one specific show where the individual was kicked out that I got to be that role. Obviously stuff like that can happen. But I still, I don't think he would ever say, and I don't think anybody in that show would ever say that he casted incorrectly. I think he cast it perfectly. I think the individual pushed himself out.
And I think we all knew going into that, not rehearsal, but that audition. We're like, well, he's probably going to get that. I mean, just assuming. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody who knew the show and then read the script, which we all did, was like, oh, yeah, that's him.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, who else are we going to cast in places? Well, I mean, that one's already done.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine. We're good. But, I mean, that was to me, that was a masterstroke because when you talk about a show, I couldn't get out of that character for 6 months. And I remember Tim basically told me, you're not going to be in Brighton Beach Memoirs in this position, which we thought you would cast in, because Tommy Waller I don't have to break a character away from him. He can just do it.
I remember in auditions, you still had the voice.
I still had Scapino, yeah.
And I remember them saying that, and you were like, oh. Like, you didn't even realize. Yeah. And the thing was, we didn't really even realize because we were so used to hearing it. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember
we were kind of still doing that. But, I mean, it was so ingrained, and it was not just the voice, but it was also movements because it was such a highly stylized piece.
Yeah, I was going to say I kicked my leg out at one point, and I remember what are you doing?
That's not Neil Simon.
No, not in any way, shape, or form is that Neil Simon.
Commedia.
But I mean, to me, again, that's the part of being a director that I respect so much. I mean, and especially in a small community college with 18, 19-year-olds that are most of the time very raw. You have to know how to cast something, and Tim in that, and Eric in Scapino, and I mean all the other shows that they did. It's I honestly can't look back and say that they miscast anybody in any show.
No, and the thing that I think is really cool is going to school there and coming back to work and working with them, because obviously you learn and pick up things from each director, high school, college, professional, whatever, and things that you're like, man, I really want to do that. And then other things you're like, I will never do that, or I sure hope I won't do that. And I mean, there's always some sort of mix, and every director no matter how wonderful they are, there's always something that you're not going to take. No matter how awful a director was, there's always something that you're going to take away that, like, that was positive. Yeah. So, but and the kids, the kids. I'm so old. The kids. Man, I go uphill both ways. but I'll own it. So the kids have told me that they tell the incoming students, okay, so there's like Eric and Tim, and there's Kristen. And Kristen's like the mix of like Eric and Tim. She's like in the middle. Mm-hmm. So they're like, so Tim, he's, pretty straightforward. He's this, is that. And then Eric, he's very passionate, but he's a little, a little
wonky.
Yeah. His attention kind of goes here to here. Tim's like very focused. And then Kristen's like in the middle. Like she will kind of do all these things, but she will make sure that we are out on time and, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm like, well, thanks. I take that as a compliment.
Absolutely.
Because those are two of the directors that I really pulled a good portion. I mean, and that they were our foundation.
Yeah.
Like when I went to UCM, I learned from them too, but I was in more shows. Mm-hmm. I take that back. Actually, I was only in one Eric show, one Tim show, one Mike Beam show, and one Dina Ferris Peltz show. Yeah. So, yeah. Stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically, I was only in one show a piece from them, but I did, like, soundboard, run crew, worked in the shops, that sort of thing. So I was still around them more, I felt, than I was at UCM. And definitely, like UMKC, I didn't act, perform. I did more of the academic side of stuff.
Was UMKC your master's program?
Or one of them, yes.
One of them, okay.
Mm-hmm. So
that's right.
Yeah, because I'm insane to have a lot of student debt.
Well, Corey, the guy that I just had on here, he's got 2 masters and working on his doctorate. So
I was listening to that one on the way here.
Yeah, Corey's one of my favorite people in the world.
I was thinking about this. I thought, I want you and him to have a podcast that's just you and him. Like in each
I keep
week.
telling him.
Okay, Corey, if you're listening and you care about the opinion of a random person, you should totally have a podcast with Alex and just have like a subject in history or just a topical thing, whatever. I was just like, I going off on side tangents.
Yeah.
Hey,
you're good. You're good.
It's not really
this
a
is what it's
tangent.
for.
It's a good thing. Yeah, that's true. But I found, because I just very recently got into podcasts, like less than a year ago.
Yeah.
Because I got this plug-in thing to my car that's a Bluetooth thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I not do this earlier? Because my CD player does not work.
Hey.
And I still have CDs, guys. But it wouldn't work, and so I would just listen to the radio, but I was getting bored with that, so I'd start listening to things on my phone. But then I would like have it up like as I'm driving with it near my ear, and I'm like, well, this is making my arm tired. So then it's like, oh, headphones, and I put those in, and I was like, this probably isn't very safe, and so I was like going through all these things, and I finally took me way too long to get that. But anyway, so once I started doing that, I started listening. I got it. Spotify has like rocked my world.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to music that I've never listened to before, and I think it's awesome. So anyway, from there, I also started listening to podcasts, and I was like, I don't know what to listen to, so I just typed in theater because I was like, I don't know what else I'm interested in. and so then I started listening to some theater podcasts, and then I started listening to like branching out. But what I learned very quickly was I can't stand to listen to some people talk. I can't. And I'm like, and there's a certain podcast. I'm like, man, I would love to listen to this, but I cannot stand the host's voice. I can't do it. It's too, I don't know. There's something about it. And so
I'm the same way with revisionist history.
Okay.
Yep. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the subject matter. And I really do. I've read Malcolm Gladwell's books. I've read Outliers probably 3 times now. I love that guy's mind. I cannot stand to listen to him.
Oh, man. See, that just ruins it. But no, I remember the first one I listened to of yours was you and Eric, obviously.
Oh, of course.
Because I'd seen you post them. I was like, oh, I need to listen to that, But then I just never, I was like, oh, I'm going to finish this one first before I get over here. I did. So anyway, when Eric's went up, I was like, okay, I got to listen to it. And I found myself, in my car, commenting or laughing, and then you guys would say the next thing that I had just said in my car, and I was like, this is like a conversation. I just want to be a part of this in real life, And so it was just I just found it very easy to listen to, and I was like, this is what needs to happen. So anyway, You're very easy to listen to.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I've become a little bit of a different person, which you should do in life.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Eric, it was so easy. And I remember,
Oh,
I can't remember if I was recording at that point or if it was a conversation that we had right before we went on. But he was like, when you asked me, I was a little worried because I was like, I don't know about this. It's like, and then I listened to one and I was like, ooh, he cusses. I was like, yeah,
he
the
did
whole
say that on the podcast.
okay,
yes.
good. Yeah, because I was like, yeah, that's the whole point of this. Is it's a long form conversation where you can be yourself, and I think that's it's kind of lost in the world right now because
agree.
I don't like the first podcast that I don't even know. Actually, I do know how I got turned on to it. It was because he had a certain guest on.
Okay.
But it was Joe Rogan's podcast, which is like the #1 most downloaded. And
I've heard of him.
yeah, he's the Fear Factor guy, stand-up comic. Yeah.
That's the okay. Gotcha. I was like, I know that name. I don't know who it is. Okay.
But yeah, he's done stand-up comedy since like the late 80s. He obviously did Fear Factor twice. He has all kinds of stand-up specials, and then he's kind of a renaissance man. But he started a podcast back when nobody knew what the fuck that was.
Right.
And so he's just kind of kept doing it, and now he's like on his 13 or 1400th episode.
Holy crap.
Oh yeah, and they're all, but I was listening to him, and I started a podcast called The Retired Millennial. But it was 20 minutes of me talking, and I got like 3 episodes deep, and I was like, cancel, I can't stand this. This is like, listen, first of all, when you first hear yourself on this, I'm sure you do it, you're like, oh God, that's what I sound like.
I'm so terrified to listen to this. Okay, yes.
But when you do that, it was like one of those, like, I'm just listening to it, I hate it, and I ended it, but I was like, one thing I do appreciate is the fact that I can get a microphone, a program on my computer, and I can basically edit it or not edit it.
Right.
And it's the same thing. Like, this makes me really happy. I really like this. So I was like, I know I'm going to come back to podcasting, but I want to figure it out. Then I got on his, and then my wife recommended Dax Shepard's podcast, which he actually just started like this past year.
Oh, cool.
So he does that, and same
like
thing.
Dax Shepard.
Yeah, he's a good dude. But he did the same kind of thing. He just had, he has guests. It's called I think it's like Armchair Expert or something like that. And again, it's just conversation, long form, sitting back talking. And I was like, you know what? Even if like the plan has never been, let's make this a career. The plan has always been, what an amazing excuse to, one, get together with people that I haven't seen forever.
Absolutely. Case in point.
Exactly. Well, like you, Eric, I mean, even like with Corey, I see Corey every once in, like, we see each other a few times a year, but I never get the opportunity to sit down with him and talk for 3 hours. But if I have a podcast, and it's like, this is the easiest thing in the world.
Right.
And the true case in point about why I started this initially was my first episode was Bob Kendrick, and I always bring this up, but he was the president of the Negro League Baseball Museum. If I called up Bob Kendrick and was like, hey, you want to come to my basement and have a conversation? Be like, yeah, as soon as I call the cops. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. We had some surveillance out there.
Yeah.
And
But I called him up and was like, hey, man, I'm starting a podcast. I have a few people lined up, which he was my fourth. He was supposed to be my fourth episode, and he ended up being my first because of a snowstorm.
What a strong first episode.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh. I was so enthralled. I was like, I didn't know anything. Like, I love learning. Obviously, that's why I'm at a college.
Yeah.
Because I just love that experience. But I thought, I was listening to him, and I was just like, oh, my gosh.
He was
I
amazing.
didn't know that. And he was just, like, so, like, thorough and well-spoken, and it was very easy. Again, very easy to listen to. Honestly, it's a very good first podcast for you because I always start things chronologically. I have to go in order because I'm not diagnosed, but I feel like I'm low-key OCD. Like, I have to do these things in order. And so I was like, well, okay, we'll see how this goes. And I was like, this is so awesome. Yeah, I got to Sedalia because I obviously I listened to it on my drive to Sedalia.
Of course,
and I drive home. And so I was like, man, I've learned so much. I can't wait to get home and tell Nick about this because, he's obviously a huge baseball fan and Royals and everything. Yeah. So I was like talking to him about different stuff. I was like, oh, did you know this? Did you know this?
It's like, where did my wife go?
Right. I was like, all right, I didn't know that you're so into baseball history. I'm like, well, I mean, I can be.
Yeah. Well, with each episode, and I notice, like, I go back and listen to these a few times a piece because I always catch myself, like, I'm talking too much, I'm not doing the right thing. Just, like, it's self-teaching. You're trying to do the right thing, and you're just like, dude, shut the fuck up. Would you please? Come on. Yeah. But with him, he's one of the best interviews because I would just ask him a question like, so what was 1920 like? Well, 1920, and he just go.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. He was a
yeah.
great interview. He was a great guy. I mean, he was ridiculously kind. Like, I talk about him a lot because it's like, if you're in any way, shape, or form trying to help somebody out, be like Bob Kendrick.
Nice. Yes.
He was so good.
Aw, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like part of it for me, because like you're like, oh, I talk too much. I think part of it is we haven't seen you in a while, so we want to know about you as much as you want to know about us. So you know, so some of these things I'm just listening, like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. Oh my gosh, you know? So
yeah, I always try to, whenever I do my intros, I always try to really like kind of hit on, hey, and just FYI, here's some of the, like with Eric's, because at the end, and I say that in the intro, you know, I basically said like, hey, we're good friends. We hit on some conversations you might not be comfortable with. Here's pretty much what it happens. Let me know.
Right.
My buddy Brian, who's now been on the podcast twice.
I haven't listened to the second one. I listened to the first one.
Yep. So Brian came on the podcast and he was like, so all I wanted, like, he's like, it was probably the best marketing that you've ever done because all I wanted to do was get to the last 30 minutes of that podcast. I was like, yeah, I need to think about that a little bit more thoroughly.
Right.
That's
yeah.
okay. But I mean, it has been really nice. And like you said, you know, with Corey, it's like, and you discover, you know, when you are able to talk with somebody and have those conversations, it's really cool.
It is. Oh my gosh.
But Corey's amazing because like I could literally be like, so what's the history of fish? Be like, well, let's talk about it. And somehow he'd go 3 hours and make it interesting.
Right. I was gonna say, like, he has a really cool way of breaking things down to where, like, because I feel like I'm not as knowledgeable about a lot of stuff as I probably should be, just as a 32-year-old adult, you know. And so I'm like, oh man, I really didn't pay much attention to that part. Oh, I didn't even know that happened. Well, I feel dumb, you know. But then I'm like, okay, all right, I think I got the key points. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah.
Oh,
you
100%.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. The second podcast started with me sending him a message like, you want to come back on? And it's summer for him, and he teaches at Barstow. He was like, yeah, definitely. What do you want to cover now? And I was like, dude, you're a history major. Here's 5 things that I thought off the top of my head.
Right.
And the first one was like, convince me that Thomas Jefferson's not a complete asshole. And he was like, oh, I got you there, because he'd made a Facebook post with the Jefferson Memorial that he went to in Washington, D.C. And I said, I can't remember if I sent him a message or I commented on it. Was like, that guy's an asshole. He was like, no, he's awesome. So we went back and forth about that. And then I said something to the effect of, we have no idea what like the history of the East is like. Let's talk about some key moments. And as soon as he got on the podcast, I was like, which by the way is the like most Western douchiest thing I could have said. Like 5,000 years of history. Let's hit on some key points. It's
just
fine.
Some key, like, you know, one-liners.
Yeah.
Like just,
I'm sure there are no transgressions on our side of the aisle. I'm sure it's just all them. It's fine. Like, oh my God. As soon as I got him on the podcast and I started thinking, I went through the list. I was like, that was a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
But I mean, but you
at
say,
least you're aware of it and can like reflect on that, because I mean, I feel like I do a lot of those kinds of things too. I say things, I'm like, okay, well that came from a place of very obvious bias, and I recognize it. So hopefully it's like semi, you know, rectifiable.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I think there are a lot of times where you just kind of have to realize, like, okay, I do have bias in that, and you know, I don't think you have to get, you know,
don't have
when
to
you
be
watch
right all the time.
Right, exactly. And I don't think you need to get into the weeds. Like, I think we're so used to seeing the news cycle be you're either bad or good,
right,
that you can't admit when you might not be correct, but it's a positive thing to say that so you can move forward. So I think that's definitely something that we should be working on quite a bit.
Yes. I feel like I'm very much on the side of, you know, if I'm wrong, just, you know, don't be a douche about it. But but you know, like, hey, actually, this is kind of how I think about it. You know what? You're right.
Yep.
You know, okay, yeah. I wasn't thinking about that. There we go. Okay, I'll do that. You know, and so I feel like that's something that I try to instill in, like, the theater kids, my students, things like that. Like, it's okay to be wrong, because no one's right 100% of the time, but it's your willingness to take whatever factual information or at least an opinion that you think is fairly sound, and at least think about it. You know, it doesn't have, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with anyone, but taking the moment to realize that, hey, this is a human being that has an opinion, that had a very certain history and backstory that you don't know about.
Right.
So they are coming from a completely different place than you, and that's okay. Is what they're thinking right? Maybe. Is what they're thinking wrong? Maybe. Probably in the middle? Yeah.
Yeah, and have the conversation. I mean, don't push somebody away. Yeah. And how, when you, State Fair is a very different environment compared to most, like, even community colleges.
Yes.
Because you have so many people that actually stay on campus. You have people that are traveling, but they're traveling from quite a distance to get there.
Yeah.
And you have people of all different age brackets. I mean, I was kind of joking about it, like the State Fair Community College, sometimes your, associate's degree takes 7 years, but
sometimes you try to get a doctorate.
Exactly.
It's
a State Fair. Yeah. They just don't offer it, but you got it.
Right, you got it.
But I mean, it is interesting to me too, because trying to describe that community college is very difficult because it's in such a middle ground between university and community college, because it's not community college as you normally think about, where you just drive up there, get your credits, drive home, and that's where you stay for 2 years. And it's not a university setting where you've got, frat houses and 50 different buildings and that kind of thing. It's this weird middle ground.
Yeah.
So how has that, I think what you were saying, hey, man, you're wrong. What you need to learn is this. Yeah. It's like that's virtue signaling.
Right.
But when
that's a good term. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
I did not make it up.
Okay.
But
doesn't matter.
Fantastic. Like, did you know that chickens are humans? Like, no, they're not. But I agree that their life is valuable too. It's fine.
Right.
Let's just be honest. But how has that kind of weird political culture penetrated State Fair at all? I mean, more than normal? Because, my alma mater at this point is Mizzou, and we were on the national stage a few years ago about it.
Yeah. I don't know. State Fair, it is very unique. I mean, we're obviously in the middle of Missouri, so we tend to have leanings towards the conservative side of things on a lot of areas. But there is also a good amount of, I don't know if the right term is liberalism, but we do also have a good amount of liberal leanings too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's very interesting. I mean, when we're looking at seasons, like our season, we have to look at, well, we don't want to do crazy, weird, dark, avant-garde, cursing, killing babies kind of
Equus
plays.
and Rent are not going to be on the State Fair Community College stage.
Probably not very soon, even though neither one of those are about killing babies.
Right.
but those don't have to be there because there's so much dramatic literature that is very good that also doesn't have to be extreme.
Yeah.
And so I think it's finding that middle ground there, and not just doing, we're doing another farce.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing another, standard drama. So
we're doing The Foreigner for the 5th time.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a great show.
No,
But there's so many new plays coming out that have, great value that you're not giving, and not that, I think Neil Simon is wonderful. I think he's one of my favorite playwrights, and I think that people give him, in the theater world especially, kind of put him down a lot because, he's popular commercial theater. Well, yeah, he found something that worked, and it's also funny, and it's good.
Yeah.
But
just because people like it doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. Oh, my gosh. Yes, that Lisa Simpson meme that says, just because.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I think. I cannot. That's a pet peeve of mine. Cannot stand that. I'm like, just like what you like. And it's okay if someone else doesn't. Let it go. Think about things that are more important. Anyway, so I don't even remember where I was now.
There was just somebody that you and I both know that popped into my mind when you said that. You know better than I do. Yeah.
I probably know you know that. Yeah.
It's like,
yes.
I know the person.
Okay. Yes. So, but I think that Neil Simon is awesome. But at the same time, on the flip side, I don't think we need to do Neil Simon. And I don't want to say like anymore because,
of course you're
whatever.
But
I don't think we need to do him as often as we do. And the same thing with like I think Tennessee Williams is fantastic and incredible. I think that Arthur Miller is great. But there are so many contemporary playwrights that need the money,
Mm-hmm.
that have really great pieces of literature out there that we don't do.
We don't need to do lazy theater.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I understand that certain things are crowd pleasers, and I completely support doing like a classic piece. And I think having a very well-rounded season is very essential, because you're serving not only the community by giving a variety, but you're also serving the students by giving them a good idea of what's out there. Because when you do professional summer theater, you're probably going to do some of the classic stuff, so you need to have a good idea of that repertoire. But you also need to have a good idea of new playwrights out there. And if you like a certain playwright, like, wow, this play was really cool, go research other plays that person has written, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of mixing that in more is really nice. But anyway,
just out of curiosity, on the like the actual business of the theater, do you think part of that has to do, because State Fair normally does 4?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
one's a children's show.
One's a children's show, which is always awesome.
Yes.
But so if you're thinking 3 main plays, like 3 true plays or musicals,
right?
You have 2 that are a little, you know, they can be something that's dramatic. They can be something basically that's just off from what you would normally go to see.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think and again, this is more just coming on, like just thinking about this, but does one need to be a crowd pleaser to get butts in the seats?
Sometimes.
Yes and no?
I wouldn't say it's like the formula, like you have to do this every year, otherwise it's not going to work. But there are years when it's like, you know what, it feels like we should probably do a big crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
I think we kind of need to do that for our audience, and maybe kind of get our audience base going again, maybe in areas that maybe we've neglected a little bit before. Because, obviously you can't please everyone. Like, for example, Be More Chill is a musical, so it's going to please the musical theater fans.
Right.
But it's probably not going to please the 60-year and up generation, and probably even, honestly, like 50 years and up, 45. Like, I mean, it is a musical that specifically, its specific demographic is like, I would say millennial, because we're like on like the edge of the millennial, but also Gen Z, or whatever they call it.
The one after us.
Yes, yeah. I'm like, I think that's it, because I think millennials and Gen Ys are the same.
Yeah.
And then Gen X before. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like millennial down, because I mean, I'm like, I enjoy it.
Right.
So I'm like, I assume that other people my age will probably, but us and then down, like it's aimed more towards that demographic.
Yeah.
So one thing, Ron Winnegar went to go see the show, and one thing that I just found this to be a huge compliment. He said, I absolutely loved it. I hated the show. I hated the script. He was like, I don't know if he said I hated, but he was like, I didn't like the script. But it was a really well put together show. It was very fun.
Yeah.
The music was very catchy, and it was a very high quality production.
Nice.
But I thought, and I told him, I said, thank you. I go, that I really appreciate that you were able to break apart, those things, because just because you don't like the script of something doesn't mean that it's not a good show.
Right.
And I mean, and not that I thought that Ron Winnegar wouldn't say that, because of course he would. He's, he's super, incredibly smart and wonderful, and a wonderful human being. So like, of course, he's going to say something awesome like that, but it just felt really good. But like, that show is not going to appease an older crowd. So, maybe since we did that, we should balance it out with, like last year we did Dracula. Tim did Dracula. So that appealed to a vast variety, because, older, the older demographic loves Dracula. Like, who younger, everyone loves Dracula.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but, but anyone, familiar with that lore, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And that was a really cool show. Like, Tim did an incredible job with that show. And so really, when we're looking at putting together a season, we try to balance, are we kind of serving generally, each demographic that we need to, because I don't think that it's fair to not do anything quote unquote offensive.
Right.
Because if you don't do anything, like if you don't do anything that has any language, kitties, and puppies and rainbows, cool. That's not always very exciting. You don't want to just do comedies, because, people don't just enjoy comedies. People enjoy, gravity and theater and you know, so but some people just like comedy, so, you know, and so that's why, like, when we're looking at seasons, you know, maybe we look at all of like the genres and then maybe different graphics, but then we are also looking at cast size and how many people, because we rotate out usually every year. We have some people going in and out, so we're looking at it, and we have to do a little bit of a prediction and like, hey, who do we know that we have coming in, or who do we have a really good idea that is coming in, because if we're going to have a really female heavy group of students, we're not going to do 12 Angry Men. Yeah, you're going to do Steel Magnolias. Yeah. No, we won't. Nope. I think Tim and Eric would roll over and die before we did Steel Magnolias. Which, you know, I will be honest, I've actually never seen nor read the script, movie, whatever. Yeah. So I mean, I've read the script. I haven't done the others. I just they'd freak out. I know what it's about, and I know that their thoughts on those. But yeah. So we're looking for. So yeah, exactly. So for example, this year we're doing Spamalot. Eric talked about Spamalot. You know, it's a very male heavy, and we have a good amount of men, or I don't know. Yeah, young men. I sent him a message after he did that, after he did the podcast, and I was like, I've got one character that I'd like to do, and it's not a long scene, but it's an important one. Please let me do it. Please let me do it. Which one? I forgot which one you said. I think it was the Black Knight. Is that? Yeah. Yeah. It's just a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound. Yeah. Yes. It's like I'm gonna piss off some poor kid that wants that role so bad. But I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I'll give you a flesh wound. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm years older and significantly heavier at this point. I think I can take you out. Right. No, but I told him, I was like, I know that that's gonna be a role somebody wants, but if you can figure a way to do it, I'll make a donation. I will come down every single night of the run. I will. For that. Just for that line, or just for that role. Absolutely. And I watched, like, they have clips on it, and I was like, I know they have it, because I hadn't seen it, but, I mean, I've heard and seen so many things, so I just looked up the clip. I was like, yes. That's Absolutely. It. It's a one-scene character. It's the best beautiful. Character. It really is. It really is. But, yeah, so that show is very male heavy on at least I mean technically it probably balances out, but the men have more significant parts, and there's the Lady of the Lake and then the Laker girls, which are just, you know, not the dancers or anything, but you know, there's not a lot of meat to that. And so I mean, I know that I think he said on the podcast too that he's probably gonna take certain characters and cast them as women, you know, to balance it out. But, you know, there's that. And so then when I was looking at shows, I was also trying to find a show that I wanted to do that also kind of leaned more towards like the female side. Like, and so Mr. Burns is 5 women, 3 men. You know, and so then it's like, okay, well, it's kind of, and, you know, maybe not exactly or whatever. But, you know, you're looking at balancing out some of those opportunities, especially when you're like, well, some of these people, this is going to be their last year, and you want to give people who deserve it those opportunities. Not that you're pre-casting, but at least having the opportunity to be cast in something that has a little bit of meat. At least the opportunity is there. Yeah. So. Well, in pre-casting, like, it gets a dirty reputation, but you know, and I won't make you speak out too much to this, but I mean, it gets a dirty reputation, but at the same time, like, when you're a director and you have your group, especially the last couple of shows of the year, you know, I mean, you don't want to admit it, but you know, you're just like, yeah, well, I mean, and here's the thing, when I did Be More Chill, it was the first time I had done a show in the spring semester. I had always either done the children's show or the October show. Just something about how it worked out with what Eric and or Tim were thinking about doing, and then I kind of would fill in with, hey, what is needed? Or if something was decided and I'm going to do this show, and then I love you, Eric, but he likes to change his mind sometimes. You know, and so it's like, actually, I really want to do this. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, like, you're the theater director, like, I mean, you're the coordinator, like, I just want to do theater, so please just allow me to do it, you know. And so I would kind of quote unquote fill in the gaps with things. But I think that I was okay doing that because we've jumped around a lot. But so my not AFA. We have an AFA now. I'll talk about that later. The AA, focused in theater, UCM. I got my bachelor's of fine arts in theater, theater performance. And then I went to UMKC and got my MA in theater history / dramatic literature. And then, my diploma just says theater, but that was like the emphasis. And then I went back to UCM and got my MA in communications because yes. So I say I took the Highway 50 route of education. Yeah. And just kind of loop back and working at State Fair. It's like a boomerang. So so anyway, I actually wasn't going to get a second master's. I was, theater, that's my calling, that's my passion, that's what I'm doing. So I'm in I just have my thesis left. Yeah. Which, by the way, I should have graduated in May 2012. I graduated in December 2014 with that, and then May 2015 with my communications B. And so I was pursuing technically 2 master's programs at the same time, and it was awful.
That sounds freaking terrible.
Because communications required APA format, which I had never done before in my life, because theater was always MLA, and it was fine. So I was writing a thesis in MLA, and I was also having to write these other papers in APA, and I was like, I don't even know. Like, it was just like a mind
fuck. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to say too much in the way of language yet, because I don't have I feel like this is almost like a job interview. So I'm like, okay, well, I won't hold it up until after I get the job. I'm just kidding.
No, I completely understand that. My thing is, like, if somebody says one word, it's like, so how is it getting your 2 master's degrees? Not too easy, was it?
You can fill in the words for me. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'm always happy to do that.
Sounds good. but yeah. So anyway, when I started teaching like adjunct classes at State Fair, Tim told me before the fall semester started, he's like, well, if you want to be able to teach more classes, you should probably get hours in masters for communication. I went, Tim, I'm not done with this one. And he's like, well, I didn't say you had to. I was just saying it'd be a good idea. And I was like, okay, I'll get my master's in communication. I'll apply. And he goes, well, you don't have to get the whole thing. You just need like 18 credit hours. Because at the time, that's, things have kind of changed since then. But I said, Tim, if I'm going to start something, I'm going to finish it. Yeah. I might be grumpy the whole time doing it, but I'm going to do it.
Can't wait for that.
So anyway, now that's the whole reason why I have 2 master's degrees is because I needed a master's to be able to teach theater at the collegiate level, and then to teach public speaking, which gave me more hours. Yeah.
Did you take over Eric's public speaking class?
No.
Okay.
Eric's position is from my understanding, so Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, but he's like half speech, half theater. Tim is technically the only full-time theater instructor at State Fair.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, and so he always has like a load of speech and his coordinator duties and all the the theater stuff and directing shows and all that fun stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I thought, well, I want to teach more, but then as it gets closer to his retirement, and obviously like Eric talked about on the podcast, and if you've talked to me for 5 minutes, which it's been much longer than 5 minutes, but obviously I want to step into that position when he retires. So obviously it's not a given. I have to apply and hopefully get an interview, and I hope that
I think you've got a lot of the right voices behind you.
I hope so, because because literally I've wanted to do this since I started, because I wanted to be a high school theater teacher, because that's all I knew. Yeah. And then I had middle of fall semester 2005 at State Fair, and I was like, this is so much more fun than high school. I could do so much more stuff. And so since 2005, I have wanted to teach college at a theater. Yeah.
Theater at a college.
Theater at college,
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, thank you. So I've wanted to do that, but I was like, I like the community college. I like the small, because I came from a small school.
Yeah.
And like I grew up in.
What was your high school? Like, what was your area?
Skyline High School, which is like technically Hickory County R1.
Okay.
It is, if you take 65 highway from Sedalia, like you're going down to Springfield, my school's in the middle of the hayfield.
Interesting.
I graduated with 42 people, and I had less than 1,000 in my school K through 12. It's grown a lot since then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still small, but it's grown. It's more than 1,000 now.
Yeah.
But so that was. I thought Sedalia was huge. I had Sedalia was like, what is this giant metropolis? You know, like I remember. I remember this conversation with you. Like Trevor and I were like. Because he came from Macon, you know, and so we were like, "Oh my gosh, a Walmart stays open for 24 hours." And you looked at us and you said, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah, don't they close at 9?" And you were like, "No, Where does that happen? What Twilight Zone does it happen?" I'm like, Buffalo, Missouri.
Yeah.
So
I remember coming to Sedalia, and it wasn't a negative. It was just like different.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was from Raymore, so it's not like I was like in the middle of a giant metropolis. I just had one that was accessible.
Right. And
but
I did not.
No. And then meeting all of you guys, it was like, wait, somebody's from Otterville? Who the fuck? That's not a real town.
That does not sound real.
Yeah. So I mean, even the people that were from Sedalia, they were like, we have a buckle here. It was like, there are more than that in the world, right? Come on.
Yeah, so like when I came to State Fair, I was just like, this is huge, and I was terrified to drive anywhere else between, like, other than like the school and to Walmart, like that 16th Street to Winchester.
Yeah, well, it has to be a positive too, because if you were dropped in the middle of downtown Kansas City, it probably would have been a terrible experience.
Oh my God, yes, I would not have survived.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would have, but I would have. Yeah, so I and then technically Warrensburg is smaller, which I would not have thought, but I'm like, oh, the college makes up most of the time. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yep.
But then when I went to Kansas City for UMKC, like I had gained enough confidence, even though I still wasn't comfortable in it. I was like, okay, I got this. I'm better, So that, and also I really didn't drive in the main traffic either. Like my apartment to UMKC, I crossed a busy street, but I didn't I wasn't in the
driving across it
right, exactly. I wasn't in like bumper to bumper traffic, like waiting for things to happen.
Right.
So I mean, really I kind of got lucky. I realized when I was in Kansas City though that I absolutely 100% hate one-way roads.
Yes.
Because I'm like, I just want to turn around.
Because that's our entire downtown.
Yeah, and so I would get so and I get flustered anyway. I'm not very good with directions.
Yep.
I've gotten a little bit better over the years, but I'm still not very good. I am not spatially sound. Like it's not one of my strengths. And so when I can't turn around when I need to turn around, like I don't know how to get back, I freak out. So anyway, I don't remember what I was talking about.
Well, I mean, to me, you know what your goal is. You know that you have Eric's support.
That's what we were talking about.
See, I can do it when I need to.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm sure you have Tim's support and everything else. I mean, I think that to me, what I look at your position as, like to me, the best story for you, and maybe I'm wrong here, but is one, you've gone through the program, which to me is huge.
Right. And
that continues a tradition of people who have gone there.
Yes.
Had, studied under their prior
predecessor.
Their predecessor, whatever. And then they come back in order to capture that position. And I think that continuity is huge in situations like that. I mean, the only, when you think about outside of and this is going to be a weird comparison, but when you think about the NFL, you have the Patriots who have 6 championships and they have one good quarterback and one great coach, and that's been them for years. And they have this great 20-year period of time where they've been amazing.
Yes.
But the Pittsburgh Steelers have been amazing for decades, and they have had 3 head coaches, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin.
Those sound like very familiar names.
Yeah, very popular, very familiar.
Nick will know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and the most impressive thing about it is that all of them have at least 1 ring. Chuck Noll has 4, Tomlin has 1, Cowher has 1.
Nice.
In that scenario, they're one of the most consistently great teams in the NFL, and they've always been looked at as that.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a theater program, I don't think you want a lot of turnover,
No.
especially when you're talking about something like State Fair, which has to deal with the name State Fair Community College, which I bitched about at the last.
And I could go on a
podcast.
tangent. I love this school, but for the love of God, let's update our name so people don't
Mid-Missouri
think.
Community College.
I think
Come on.
that would be so solid, because that would be such a smart. It makes sense within, if you're looking at the state, Mid-Missouri. Oh,
Yep.
hey, look, there's Sedalia. Okay, community college. It's a
That's
community
fine,
college. Yeah. Like, I don't mind the word community and then community
No.
college. I think it's great. I don't like State Fair because everyone thinks and associates us with State Fair. And, oh, hey.
Did you go to State Fair Community College?
Yeah. My favorite thing is, oh, do you guys train rodeo clowns?
Oh, God.
No. Do you like have culinary skills and cotton candy? Cool. No. We are actually a very solid, incredible community college that is one of the cheapest schools in Missouri.
Yeah.
And it's a really phenomenal school if you really look at everything. And we get made fun of and misrepresented by anyone outside of our immediate area.
Yeah, well, it's like walk into our theater. Walk into the theater.
People are blown away when they walk into our theater, and when I show them it for the first time, they are like, "Oh
Whoa.
my gosh!" And we're like, "Yeah."
Especially people who appreciate theater.
Yes.
It's like 300 person, no bigger.
Oh yeah.
Everybody has a good view.
Oh yeah. I had I had shown a friend recently the theater, I think for the first time, and was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
This place is phenomenal. Like, because everyone thinks like, oh, a theater, it to be an incredible theater, it has to be like grand and seat 1,000 people and blah, blah, blah. But really, the best theaters and the ones that people appreciate the most are the smaller seat theaters. We have 239 seats, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
And the spacing is between, like you don't have to like scoot, and you don't have like a weird middle aisle, so like the best seats in the house are taken out. Like it's like the perfect wedge seating. It's so, and Tim is very much the caretaker, and if someone has their feet up, by golly, they're going off. And I mean, I do the same thing. Eric does the same thing. You can't help it when people sneak in stuff that you don't know about. But for the most part, because we've been so on top of it, our theater has stayed so nice for how old it is. People don't realize that it's that old, but it is. Not that super old, but I mean, we've only had a little bit of maintenance.
Yeah.
And it looks awesome.
Yeah, little paint, little sheetrock. That's about it.
Yeah, new carpet.
New carpet.
Yes.
Oh, hey, nice.
But we held off on the seats. They asked us if we wanted new seats. And I mean, they look dated in the fabric. Yeah. But really, I mean, there's like 2 seats that have maybe some like old gum that kind of got pressed down in there. But other than that, I mean, they are real. Tim was like, we don't need to spend money on that, and I'm like, I agree. Yeah. Like, they're a little bit older, but we'll replace it next time it comes around because we just want to be logical with our money. You know? So
well, that makes all the sense in the world, and I mean, with me, I was looking at MSU were there, and the moment Eric, and I think that's where you're going to be really good too, is you have that personality where you're going to make people feel welcome before they're there.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes.
But with Eric, when I came in, like, it was total force of personality was the reason that I eventually chose State Fair.
Me too.
But the moment you walk in that theater, you're like, so I have that guy and this. Yeah. I'm going to be good. Yeah, this is fine.
I'm going to go here because I will actually probably be cast and not passed over just because I happen to be a freshman.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, you're going to build your resume. You're going to get more experience by doing rather than watching people perform, know. So, I completely agree. And I know that I don't have the same personality as Eric. Like, he is just this grand personality. And and for the longest time, I thought I can never live up to that because I won't. That's just not me, you know. But then I eventually realized I don't need to do that to still have an impact. And I think being a navigator has really helped me with that because I'm a lot better with interpersonal, like, small group communication than I am like big crowds. I always have been. I always feel awkward like after shows. If I watch a show that like a friend is in or something. Wait, okay. Okay, that person's talking. And I finally get to talk to the person. I'm like, hey, and then the other person comes in like, oh, hey, sorry, just a second. I'm leaving. I just want to say something. And I stand there and I just get like awkward, and then I get self-conscious, and then I'm like, okay, I'll see you later. You're really busy. Bye. And then like I'll message them later on Facebook and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, and I'll like write this thing that I wanted to say, but then I just felt awkward. And so I know when I'm able to have those one-on-one conversations, I'm a lot stronger, and so I think that that's where my strengths lie. That I don't need to be an Eric, even though I think it would be great to be Eric, in that sense. But I just, it's a different approach, but I think it's still a very valid and effective approach.
100%, and I do think that. I think in the future, I mean, obviously, you're going to have to work on that yourself.
Yeah.
And I do think that when you see somebody who is worth it, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't care who's trying to talk to you. We're going to have a conversation.
Right.
But, I mean, you look at anybody in a sales role or something like that, I mean, it's just a learned trait because you just have to figure it out. The thing that you have that most others don't have is that one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
Because until I went into sales, it was really difficult for me to have a one-on-one conversation. You see me in front of hundreds of people, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Completely fine.
I'm completely opposite. That's so funny.
My personality turns on, I'm good to go. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm being me or a character, I'm fine. The moment that I'm sitting down with, like, 3 people, like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Are we good here? What are we doing?
Right.
And so that's, it's a learned trait that way for me, the same way it is for you in that situation.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you nailed it when you were in a show. You always, like, there was never any worry from anybody that you weren't going to be there. And especially in this situation, I mean, I think that especially with, like, high school kids coming into college, you're going to be able to, like, do that, arm over the shoulder, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
We're going to be fine.
Take you under my wing. It's cool. Yeah. And, in those situations, I have gotten a lot better with. And I think also my role as a navigator has really helped me understand a lot more of the workings of the admissions process, financial aid process, like all these things that I would not have known if I just stayed as an adjunct instructor. Like I still teach classes, but now I have this full-time position that I've really learned a lot of stuff that I think is only going to make me more effective in that role if I get it. And so I don't want it to be like, hey, I'm talking about the job I'm going to get. So, like this is all in very big hopes that people are able to see these things. And I know that, Tim and Eric very much support me. Like that's been a conversation that we had early on. And, we've talked about a lot of the difficulties of being a person in theater with a family.
Yeah.
And the fact that I live in Blue Springs and travel to Sedalia makes a lot of people weary. Whether it's friends, family, colleagues, whoever, and not necessarily like super weird, but just like, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, well, I've been traveling every day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 to State Fair since September 1st, 2016.
Yep.
I think if I'm doing, like, in part of what I'm doing in that job, like, I'm very passionate about helping students. So that's what I enjoy. But to get the full passion of helping students and also teaching full time and also being, like, directing at the, that whole trifecta, like, of course it's going to be fine. Plus, my husband is a mechanic. My car, knock on wood, has over 356,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
And it's so far,
Jesus,
it is good to go. We've had some things that we've had to replace along the way. I think I have to have my oil pan replaced or something next time Nick changes it. But other than that, like, I have regular maintenance. Like, and I also think that what's really nice is, like, Nick and I have had a solid sit down, not just one conversation, but we have really talked out the logistics of this. Like, moving into that position, I would be going from having like a 6 to 7 week time that I am not home Monday through Friday to
all year
12 to 14. Because, Tim directs one, and then whoever the director
That's
or
what
the
you're
other
saying.
one is.
Yeah.
So there's going to be those periods of time where I'm not home, where Nick is the sole caregiver of Joel. And, that's a lot. And I also, and so part of me feels very selfish because I'm like, I've wanted to do this for so long. This has been like my ultimate passion. You know, some people, their passions are their family, and that's what they put everything into. And not saying that my passion isn't my family, but the thing I have been working towards for 15 years has been this. And you know, and Nick and I talked when we very first started dating. I'm like, this is what I want to do, and it has not wavered. And you know, he's incredible. Nick, I love you. He has truly been.
I love you too, Nick.
Yes. Everyone loves you. You're amazing. But no, he has been just an incredible supporter of, you know, the time off I need when I have to, you know, work late grading stuff because I can't grade when I'm 8 to 5, you know, so I have to wait until Joel's asleep and do all this. And so there's a lot of time and sacrifice. But then we've also been, you know, working on finding that balance of, you know, this is the time that we just get to spend together. This is the time that we have our little trifecta family time together. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, nothing's perfect, and we're going to hit some learning curves and road bumps along the way, just as anybody does in any relationship. But he's been on board since the beginning, which I think is a huge component in, like, the success of your obviously your marriage, but just of anything in your life, like everyone being on board. And so that's something that, you know, we've had to be upfront about. And, you know, and Eric and I have had conversations about that because he's like, and I have talked to not just him, but other, whether colleagues or former faculty members, like, hey, you had a family or have a family, and you do this theater thing that's really weird and different from any other job.
Right.
How do you balance that? Or if you didn't balance it, what did you learn from it? Like I have sought out those conversations with people and still have a few to still seek out. Of course. But I'm like, I want to learn, you know, what am I doing right? You know, what should I be looking out for? Ooh, maybe what have I messed up on? You know, and so I've kind of hit on a lot of those. So I feel like I'm a pretty, I self-reflect like constantly, probably too much because I was
gonna say that's not really surprising.
Yeah, really, yeah. You know, I'll say something and be like, oh, you know, if you think that sounded a little bit weird, and you're like, whatever. I promise you, I've been thinking about that for the past 5 days, and I haven't slept. You know, like sort of thing. So I even though I have that like retrospective thing, I still miss things just like any other human. So, you know, I think just owning up to them, and I don't have a problem owning up to things when it came wrong. I'm embarrassed, but I will own up to it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a big step, but it is something, like you said, that you focused on for a long time, that you've wanted to do for a long time. And I think that in any relationship, especially, you know, with your family, because once, and maybe this is selfish of me to say, but I think when you have a family that is you and your spouse, you guys married each other and you know each other, so there's certain things that you're just kind of like, you're good with this because we're married and you know me.
Right.
Once you add a kid into the mix, things become very, very different. And so then it's not only... Oh, my God,
yes.
Yeah, and like when we had Connor, like I stayed home with Connor for over a year because he was a NICU baby. He was in the NICU for 6 weeks. He was born at 29 and a half weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was 3 pounds, 7 ounces, went down to 3, and I pretty much like threw everything I had in the pipeline away and just watched him. Yeah. So I watched him until about a year and a half, and what he needed was just outside of me. It was like, you know, he was falling behind on speech, and they were like, well, it's because he's a, you know, NICU baby, and I was like, no, it's not. It's because I talk to myself, but there's no way he's picking up what he needs to pick up. So we threw him in daycare, and he's been awesome.
Right.
But when all of that happened, it was a conversation between my wife and I, and it was just like, this is what he needs. So I'm going to stay home, and I'm going to make sure his diet's perfect. This is perfect. This is perfect. He's consistent, everything. And just threw away everything for a year and a half and just took care of him. And so we understood, and we established that relationship at that point. And then I eventually like started doing real estate again and just kind of did my own thing when he went to daycare. When we had the second kid, it was even crazier because one was in daycare, and then our lives just went insane. Because once you had a second kid...
Man, that's a conversation that Nick and I have had a lot, too.
Yeah.
When to do that, if to do that.
Yeah, and I can tell you that it's absolutely worth it, but, man, it takes a while for it to be worth it.
And that's the consensus I've gathered,
Yeah, it's just crazy, and it's, you know, again, it's just one of those things, like, you get that schedule down, you figure it out. But I think that the positive is, no matter what you guys choose to do with a second kid, but in your current situation, the biggest positive is that, you might be gone for 6 to 7 weeks, 12 to 13, 14 overall, and you're going to have duties that kind of pull you away a little bit more than in the past.
Especially like recruiting. Like I didn't even like talk about that, but I know recruiting, you're going and watching a lot of high school shows. Yeah. Thankfully, Nick likes going and watching theater with me. Yeah. But then the flip side of that is Joel is not quite old enough to go with us, so it's like making sure we find somebody. Yeah, find the babysitter. And so there's, but there's going to be a lot more of that, and that's also something that we know is in the mix, but that's also going to take away some of those nights too.
Yeah, absolutely. But the positive is, if you guys know that that's worth it,
absolutely,
I guarantee, knowing you, when you are home, it's going to be all about home. Throw the phone away. Don't even care. This is honestly all about family.
That is exactly what it is. That's why I would try to kind of grade stuff when Joel was awake, but then I feel like really guilty. I'm like, I don't see you throughout the day, and now I'm trying to grade while you're here, and then now you're going to bed at 8:30. And so it's like, no. And so like when I get home, I am just like with him, and I'll make you food, I'll play with you, interact in these ways, because I love spending time with him, because it's like the absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Of course,
like you have to have that separation for you to be able to truly appreciate what you have, and I feel like I definitely appreciate.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I mean, the same thing with you and Nick. Like, you're going to have to go out and do your own thing and be you again, because that's always the thing that, and Nikki and I probably fail, and it's more than we succeed, but there are times where we're just like, we have got to leave. Like, we have to remember the two of us again.
We have to remember that we existed as an entity before anything else. Yeah,
and she travels for work a lot, so a lot of times, like, I'm here, so my schedule is completely around whatever the kids do. And you never realize just how little time you have until you get the call from daycare, like, hey, they're running a fever. And you're like, fuck, I just ruined 48 hours. I have no idea what I'm going to do here.
Exactly, right. And the thing is, like, that's tough for, because Nick and I both work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
But his daycare is in Blue Springs in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
From Nick. So when they call, I had to tell them, like, please call Nick. I'm an hour and 5 minutes away. Yeah. So I'm like, but then again, that mom guilt comes in, like, oh, you're not able to pick up your kid. You know, and so, I mean, and there have been times that, like, Nick's like, okay, I really cannot, we are swamped. I can't. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, if you can pick him up and be home with him, I will leave right now. And then, so if you can be with him for an hour, then I can go. Yeah. And in an hour I'll be. And so, I mean, we've made it work out. And thankfully, Joel hasn't been sick in those instances like that a lot. But it just, you're right. It completely messes with your schedule. And like right now, daycare is closed for a week because they are like revamping, like getting ready for the school year, like repainting stuff and whatever. And
can't you do that when my kid's 6 and not here anymore?
Right. And so, I mean, we've had to scramble to like, hey, I'm so sorry. Can you watch Joel this day? Can you watch Joel this day? What day would work for you to watch him? And trying to do that. And then I'm in like this they call it blackout month because a
lot of drinking on campus.
That sounds not too bad.
Not as fun.
Not as fun. No, it is. It's we can't take off work unless it's like an emergency sort of thing, because we have new students coming in and getting enrolled and all that stuff. And so leading up to enrollment is crazy. Like today, I stayed late to finish up with voicemails because I'm not able to be at work tomorrow for said reason of daycare closed. And so, I said, yes, okay, I can work from home. I brought my work computer. Like, I'm like, well, I won't be there 8 to 5, but because I have a toddler running around, I'm not going to be able to make phone calls. Just, So like I'll answer emails and do as much as I can. And I can do more when he's taking his nap.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's amazing how efficient you get during their naps.
Oh, man. I just think I've wasted so much time in my life thinking, I don't have enough time. I only have 4 hours. And now I'm like,
give me 45 minutes. I'll do 8 hours worth of work.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Shove it all into one. So, yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's another concern. And, I mean, to me, though, that and it's different when you have an on-site job like you do. Like, obviously with me, my office is pretty much my home or my car. But to me, it's really interesting because in a lot of jobs, it's becoming, and even probably in yours, like you said, you can get on the computer and do a lot, but like it's becoming easier and easier and easier to actually do your job when you're not there.
Yeah.
Which is a positive and a negative.
Right.
It's a positive because of how much you can get done away from your job. It's a negative because it also affects your life outside of your job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I try to make a very distinct line. Like when I am home, I am not looking at my email. I'm not doing anything. If I'm like working on grading a class or something, I will check my email and only answer students who have emailed me from class. I will not respond to the Navigator-ish stuff because I have to make a line for myself. Otherwise, I will always be stressing and worrying, and this person's going to complain that I didn't respond to them in time because I responded this time last time. So I'm like, no, I'll just cut it off. You know, when I leave work, I'm done.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, no, I'll answer my students because that's a different schedule, you know, and so I just have to block that off of my head. I don't know what other people do, you know, but that's what I do.
I mean, it's completely dependent on industry too, because like with me, it's, you know, people expect you to be around 24/7, 365.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure
and,
as a agent. Yeah,
and in some situations, like if you have an active client, a buyer or something like that, obviously you're going to respond when as soon as you get something. But my brother is far busier than I am in real estate. I mean, the guy is just a killer when it comes to this industry. Cool. And so I've learned so much from him. But he he went to Mexico. I think it was like 5 or 6 months ago. It could have been 3 years from now. I don't know. But it was. I remember distinctly because he got back, and for 2 weeks I really didn't hear from him, and I know why. He, like, up until he left, he was getting everything in order, but we talked because he had to get things in order. When he left, I did not want to bother him at all. I think I texted him once, and it was a minor issue, like, get back to me whenever. I do not care. Drink margaritas, enjoy the sun.
I just got to put this out here so I know that I put it out there.
Exactly. And so, like, a day later, he sends me the message back. Everything's great. And then he gets back, and I know for the next week, he's catching up because he's just busy. But I called him. And he was in a kind of a bad mood. And I was like, is everything all right? And he was like, he had just gotten off the phone with somebody who didn't understand that 20 years ago you could actually just leave a voicemail or a phone message for somebody and they'd get back to you eventually. So he had this one client, and it wasn't an emergency. It was like they were in the very beginning stages of construction, which basically the first month to month and a half, it's all planning. It's all site planning. So, like, in the house right across the street here, there are pink flags in the yard.
Yes.
That's just them deciding where to dig. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So it's in that stage, and they're like, what about my countertops? What about this? What about this?
Oh, dear God.
It's like, dude, we're going to get through this, but I'm telling you one thing. Never leave me, and I'm not kidding you. I think it was like between text, voice, and email, I think this individual within 3 days left him 40 messages.
40,
40,
like 40?
40.
Oh, my.
It was like, we're going to get through it. If you ever do this again, I'll drop you as a client.
Right.
This is
I'm
not
on vacation.
Yeah, I'm on vacation.
Give me a moment.
I told you I was going to be on vacation.
Right. It's not like it was up and nothing.
Yeah. Had this been an emergency, I would have obviously responded. That's why I have my phone working in Mexico.
Right.
This was not what's going on.
Right.
And luckily, I think he was able to kind of divert it, but not before going to Mexico, which is when you want to be kind of calm.
Right, right.
So,
exactly. If there's any place you want to be calm,
yeah,
it's when you're on vacation in Mexico drinking margaritas.
Exactly, yeah. And nobody wants to hear from you after you've been drinking a few margaritas.
No, especially not client-wise. Like,
no, not at all.
Oh,
yeah. So, I mean, but again, it's just one of those things, like with your situation, with our situation, with every situation, I think there are positives and negatives. To me, one of the biggest positives with your situation is even though you're driving, even though you're going to be busy, even though they're going to be, you know, basically a quarter of the year you're going to be insanely busy.
Right.
The biggest positive is when you're not, you have the ability to shut everything off. And especially, I assume, especially during the summer.
Well, kind of depends.
Kind of depends.
So, yeah, because I've kind of bothered Eric a little bit over the summer because, you know, I had questions and incoming students who, you know, were like, hey, I'm interested in doing theater, but they weren't someone that Eric had recruited.
Gotcha.
Because I had got all those students enrolled and like set to go by May. So all the ones that he had recruited and got scholarships and things like that and auditioned for those, what have you, were good. But then there would be some that come in and are like, hey, I want to do theater. And I'm like, this is awesome. Okay, let me talk to you about it, And so then I'm like, here's his contact information, and then I'm like, hey, I'm going to connect you to him. So, like, and again, like, I don't run the scholarship budget, and I don't guarantee them a scholarship. I'm like, if you are interested in auditioning for one, basically, aka if you want to put in the effort to do this, here you go, and so there was that, and then there's like students who are returning who, they're asking me, hey, do you know if I still have my scholarship from last year? And I'm like, I don't know. You should go text Eric because I don't oversee that budget. And
Whip out the phone. Sorry, Eric. Right. Smiley face.
Right. Well, actually, today I had we had new student orientation, which is why I'm wearing this very very stylish shirt. And so we had student success, and we had one of our theater students who was getting a scholarship, and she had asked me a question about it, and I was like, I actually don't know the answer. Let me see if I can get a hold of him real quick. So then I called him, and then he didn't pick up, and then he texted me back and said, can I call you later? And I said, you can, but it would be more convenient if you could just answer this quick question, because I have the student, and I said, like, new student orientation students right here asking me these things. I don't know the answer. And so then he called me, of course, and I was like, told him, and he's like, okay, this. I'm like, great. And then also this, part B. Okay, this. Thank you. Yep. Love you. Bye. And so,
janky,
so like, right. Look, janky. Yeah, exactly. I round up. Yeah. So anyway, I feel bad for those things, but in the summer, because technically, what I found out is that you have a 10-month contract. It's basically like August to May, and then you have June and July off, quote unquote. But in that specific position, it's not like a full-time history instructor who has a 10-month contract and they're just out for 2 months and can kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, Corey.
Yeah, Corey that I don't know. But I'm thinking State Fair, like at least how they have it set up there. And so not saying that they're not doing anything, but, a theater department, you're recruiting, you have students who have scholarships, you're like coordinating all this stuff. And if you're coming to teach history, teach psychology, teach public speaking, if that is your sole job, you don't necessarily have this outside scholarship recruitment building program sort of stuff. And so Eric does a lot of saintly work when he's not technically going to be employed, because he has to be on top of that. Otherwise, he's going to lose out on a lot of things. And then unfortunately, I have to reach out to him for certain pieces of information because I don't know, or I'm not in charge of that. And Tim is on, like, he just comes to campus in the summer because he's like, he doesn't do it like all the time, like all day, but like he'll stop by and like, I want to work on this in the black box. I want to get this system put together, And so
I'm just going to do this today because it's going to have to be done anyway.
Right.
So,
and he's like, I might as well do it when it's a downtime. I'm like, okay, cool. So like,
wait, hold on. Let's clarify this with Tim. Tim's idea is I'm going to do this when nobody's going to bother me.
Exactly. I can do this work where I am just responsible for my competent self, but no, so Tim will stop by my office a lot, and we'll kind of like, so him and I are on track a lot with stuff, but that's because we're both here, right? And Eric was on vacation, which great, good, good, you need it. He very much is an overachiever, I guess. Maybe. Might be the right word. He's super passionate, very much a perfectionist, and you need a break.
Well, your brain needs one. I mean, right, exactly. Everything.
So like I said, I feel bad when I have to like ask him things, but at the same time, I know. And he said, like, I would rather you ask me than not ask me, and whatever. But it just kind of depends on when I'm gonna get an answer, and and how important it is. Because sometimes I'll just send a text and say, hey, this whenever.
Yeah.
You know, but then like the one today, I was like, I kind
I
of
need some
to know
help.
now. Thank you. You know,
Yeah.
but I've definitely learned a lot from Tim and Eric, and just working with them over the years and seeing how, you know, things are structured, who's in charge of what, like, you know, like what deans to talk to for certain things, or what
Right.
deans are over them. Like, you know, all those things make sense now, but I didn't know before. So, I mean, I've really picked up a lot, but I mean, I feel Nick he goes, you're in the end game now.
Uh-huh.
I am. It's so true. Because, you know, I have like this thing I'm working towards. I mean, and also it's not a secret because it's honestly on my long-term goals evaluation yearly thing for being a navigator. Because like, what do you want to do? I'm like,
take over.
Take over the world. Yeah, no, but I'm like a theater program coordinator at State Fair Community College, you know, and no, that's not in my trajectory path of being an advisor, moving that way. But, you know, I mean, they also knew when I was interviewing, they're like, aren't you, like, you're an instructor, like, is that what you want to do? I said, well, yeah, but being a navigator has all these qualities and parts of the job that I still enjoy, which is helping students, serving students. I'm passionate about that sort of success wherever that lies for that certain person. So all that is still the same.
Yeah.
It's in like the Venn diagram that overlaps. It's in the middle.
Yeah.
you know, it's just that, you know, the part that doesn't overlap is being, you know, in charge of a theater program.
Right.
So, you know, so I mean, I very much enjoy what I do. There are parts that I don't enjoy, but it's still going to be the same thing. In this job, I know that, you know, Tim's talked about it too, but Eric is like, you know, there are a lot of things that you don't necessarily enjoy doing. And I'm like, that's fine. But here's the thing. I read a book. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I will say that word because it's the title
It's the
of
title
the book.
of the book.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So in this book, it didn't say anything that I didn't already know, but it framed things and put ideas together in a way that's like, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And one of it was humans always find errors and problems in everything. No matter how perfect your world is, no matter how perfect you have it, you will always find something wrong.
Right.
And so what you need to do, or what this person said, what I have done and has made my life better, is realize this and start giving your fucks in the areas of things that you actually want to deal with. I'm like, oh, so true. Because I'm like, you know, yes, there are going to be a lot of problems and things that I don't necessarily enjoy doing if I get this position, but they are problems that I will much rather take on as opposed to ones in my navigator position that I don't really want to take on. I'm not passionate about it. I have to do it. I'll do it, you know, but I'm going to be more focused and more energized, and I think be of better service to people in general there.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, and how, when you're looking at things going forward, I mean, the biggest positive I think that anybody could have is that you have somebody that you can talk to that's been through all this before. With Eric. I mean, obviously, and Tim will be there, and he's going to be a huge resource too.
Absolutely.
But when you're going through those situations, I mean, when Eric was on the podcast, one of the things he talked about was, you know, if you want to, I think he's episode 10 or 11, go back and listen to it. But one of the things he discussed was, he's episode 10, the fact that he went through a 2-year period of time that was just real rough. And I saw him at some point during that 2-year period of time. He was not the normal happy-go-lucky Eric that we all know and love. And he was just going through a lot of stuff personally. But he also said that it was like stacking the deck against him was the fact that he just kind of had a couple of classes that didn't have the talent he was looking to have. And I think that's when you kind of realize who you are, not only as a person, but who you are as, you know, a theater director, where you're going to say, and this is one of the reasons I told him there's zero part of me that ever wanted to be a director, because I looked at his job and went, no.
And I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can I do that? That's work? Are you serious? That's work? I could do that and get paid for it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. It'd be 2 days into it. I'd be like, you know what? Just shut up. And I would tell me that. Like, Alex, really? Come on. Like, it's true.
Man.
But no, he was telling me that, and it was like, going through stuff personally, going through stuff professionally. I mean, you're going to have years where that happens.
Highs and lows.
Highs and lows, absolutely. But that idea that you're sitting there in 1 year or 2 years and you're looking around like, oh, no, this is what I've got. To me, the most difficult part of that would be, one, being inspired every day to come and just be like, okay, we're doing it. This is what we're doing. This is what I've got.
This is a learning experience.
Exactly. And having that positivity, which, again, I think is one of your best qualities, is that you would be able to look at that situation and say, like, well, I'm the one that dug myself into this trench. I guess I better figure it out.
Right, okay. Well, Kristen, you said you wanted a challenge.
Yeah. And I think we got to this on the podcast, but I'm not going to say the play. But there was one show that I went back and watched a rehearsal, and the lead in it, he kind of explained a little bit more about what was going on. But the lead in it was like, this is one of my dream roles. Like there are a couple of dream roles that I have, and that's one of them. And it was an Arthur Miller play. And
This wasn't at State Fair. Isn't Arthur Miller?
I think it was Arthur Miller. Isn't he the... I'll just say it. Crucible.
Oh, I was not in that.
You
You're talking about his. I thought you were saying a show. Okay.
Yep.
I got it. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that is Arthur Miller. Yes. Yeah. I thought you were talking about our time at State Fair.
No.
We didn't do an Arthur Miller play,
Arthur Miller,
did we?
no.
Okay.
But no, he did this like a year or two after I left, and I came back and saw it, and he had a particular actor that was like, this is my dream.
Yes.
I have 2 or 3 dream roles. This is one of them. And I went back, and I went backstage, and like they kind of knew at that point who I was, and I was like, what you need to do is this, and I was trying to like, this is what you do, and I was kind of like, okay, cool, and I walked back out, and I kind of looked at Eric and gave one of those like, I don't know, and he looked at me, he's like, Alex, I've been trying for 3 months. Like, oh, sorry.
Well, I remember we had gone to go see that production, and Eric sat down next to us, and we're like, all right, cool, we're gonna see it. And he goes, I'm sorry for what you're about to see. And we were like, what? And so we were like, well, are you serious? Because we're like, there's some pretty and then we watched him, we're like, okay.
And he had so many bumps in that road. I mean, I felt so bad. One, I felt bad for him because I know him, but man, when you I felt so bad for Busick because he stepped into that role, and there was nothing he could do.
No, there's nothing. But he did honestly, he
did damn well.
He did really well for holding that and reading that. But also, he had a good amount memorized, but he just had it for fantastic. Tommy, again, bring up Mr. Tommy Waller. He phenomenal. I thought Jeff Putoff did a really solid job. Like there were so many great. I think was Chris Clark. I think he was in that. Was he?
I assume so. I can't remember.
I think he was. But like there were different positions. Sorry, there were different roles and actors that played in that. I was like, this is so good. But it just and it happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. And also it was the October show, so it's wonderful, and also kind of sucks sometimes, like in this instance, is what happens.
You don't know what you're getting.
You don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Because when you have the spring to look at what's happened and transpired, and work ethics and etc., that's
that's why the spring show is always, or normally the spring show is the best, because you've had a year to look at everybody, put them in the right situation.
I also feel like that's part of, not the only reason, but part of the reason why Be More Chill was really successful is because I was like, all right, so I've heard you sing from the children's show, and I know that this happened, and I'm like, you have really proven yourself in work ethic wise. And I mean, I will always cast work ethic if the person has work ethic over an immense amount of talent. Hands down every time. Because my thought is, I'm selfish. I want a good theater experience. So I don't want to spend the next 6 weeks miserable because you decided that you didn't want to show up and work today. You know, and so sometimes you don't find that out until later. Sometimes someone seems like they're really turning around, and then they don't. So you can't always it's not a 100% prediction, but for the most part, you can kind of really place things pretty well. Yeah.
And I think too, a lot of times when you have somebody that seems like they're pretty high on the horse, you need to throw them down.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a terrible thing to have to say, but that's the true. I mean, especially with 18, 19-year-old kids. But it's true. It's like sometimes if you think you're the cock of the walk, you need to be pushed off that bridge. You know,
it's true because I mean, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. You are not having a full ride scholarship for theater to a highly prestigious school. Okay. So, not saying that you shouldn't be confident in your abilities by any means, but when you are not treating people as people, is kind of where I draw the line. I'm like, you can be confident, and I think you should be confident to a certain extent, but when you are putting your own selfish wants above everyone else's because you think that, oh, I did this in high school and I did this and I did this. That's cool, but are you a good worker? Are you showing up in the shop? Are you showing up with your lines memorized? Like if you are doing all these things and still have that personality, awesome, you can keep it, you've earned it. But it tends to be the people who have a high esteem versions of themselves tend to not want to work as hard or think that they have to work as hard or show up because, oh, I'm an actor and I don't need to do tech. Well, not at State Fair Community College because we are all a family, and if you don't contribute, then we're not going to have a very good set for people to look at, or our costumes aren't going to be the greatest because we need you. We're a small department, and so saying all of that, we honestly have an incredible group of students. Last year, and I've said this a million times, but last year, I mean, and I think we also have some really good ones coming in and things like that for this year too. But last year, it felt different. It felt like you were talking about, like when we were in school, it really, and probably everyone kind of thinks that like their group was the special group. So like, I get that, but like, I really felt that like for the most part, we were really close and tight knit and good, and fairly talented. But with also good work ethics. Like there was a good balance there for the most part. In this group of students, same thing. But I mean, they're phenomenal. I love them to death, but I think we'll continue. And I think that because we had some people who really took on like a leadership role without trying to be the leader, they were just good examples of work ethic. And, if you want to be successful, you should emulate what they're doing and kind of follow their lead. That's kind of what happened, and that precedent was kind of set. So people were kind of moving and forming over here, and which obviously benefits us.
Hugely.
So, I mean, really this group is cohesive. And we had a group of 5 students graduate this past year, and I cried at banquet. Of course, I'm a crier. I'll cry all the time. But I mean, these 5 women were just phenomenal people in the department. And we're going to have another group graduate this next year, as always happens in 2 years, 3 years, depends, but they're going to filter out quicker. But man, it's going to be hard to let them go because they're truly a good group. And so, that's what I want. That's one I want to keep getting. You know, and I think we will. I really do think we will.
That's awesome. I mean, I think one of the best things you can see with a good group is like, so when we came in, it really did feel like there were a couple of holdovers, but they weren't there the whole year. They didn't stay there the whole time. But for the most part, it was our group. And we came in replacing a group that had been there for 2 years that we didn't know. Like there was no class in between. So it was like everybody left, and then we showed up with a couple of stragglers.
Dawn Maltzberger stayed.
Exactly.
Like she was there from the previous year and then was there for our 2 years. And then moved on. But I think she's the only one that really was from the previous group, but was our group.
Right. Yeah, for sure. She's, Yeah, I mean, she's definitely the only one there. And I can think of like, what was it? Leon Shepard, Paula Snook, Dave Glazer. There were a couple of
Red Dawn.
Yep. Exact Red Dawn. That's
I
right.
say that because Dawn.
We had 3 Dawns.
Yes, we had 3 Dawns, and also Dawn Maltzberger is getting married.
Oh,
and,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, but anyway, she was saying like, oh, hey, Red Dawn's coming to the wedding dress thing when you try them on. I don't know what it's called. I'm such a girl. But anyway, but she's like, hey, Red Dawn's gonna be there, and I was like, awesome, cool, and I was like, I actually don't know what her last name is.
Nope. No, I know exactly who you're talking about.
I know exactly who it is that we're speaking about. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but so we had like a couple of people, but for the most part, we were flying blind.
Yeah.
Which go Eric for recruiting our class.
Woo-hoo!
And I'm not trying to brag too much, but like we kind of threw a lot of shit together.
Badasses.
We were badasses. But the thing that I think really puts us in a good position is the same thing that I think you and Eric and Tim appreciate, is that when the freshman class to us came in, and you had Jeff, and you had, was Lori in that one?
Jeff, I can't remember if Lori was in it. I know Tommy was.
Tommy was. Was
shit.
Tommy our class? I thought Tommy was our class.
No, Tommy was the following year.
Tommy Waller. Yeah, I'm thinking of Will Boyd. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah. Will was ours.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tommy was the next class. Jasmine Moutinho was the next class.
Yes.
Like we had all
Damon.
these. Damon. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Damon is doing very well now. There
He
were
is.
a few tough months there.
Yes.
But
yes, there were.
but I'm very happy to see him.
on his success, and I follow his stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, I think he had to grow up.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning. People just,
they're 18.
You're 18 and you don't necessarily have your head on straight. And even though
David had gone through some shit too.
He really did. Like he was
homeless twice. Yeah.
And he still finished high school and he went to college. And I mean, it's he had some rough stuff, like the rest of us.
But he was talented as could be.
Oh my God, yes.
So I mean, and he's recovered, and that's awesome. I love seeing that. And there's the other person that's recovered a little bit too, which is nice to see.
I'm also very proud and happy to see that, because I'm like, you can redeem yourself. It's all about your own personal choices. You may make a wrong choice, or maybe something that was not good for the greater whole.
Yeah.
But if you've reconciled that and figured that out for yourself and moved on, then I mean, you're all the better for it, and I respect you for it.
Yeah, I sent him a message because I told him, I was like, I'd like to have you on if you're willing to talk.
Oh, cool.
Because I think that would be an interesting one.
I think it would
I think
be too.
He'd have some stories.
I mean, he had the radio voice anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I remember he was on the radio, the local Sedalia radio, like at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
or something.
like the 2 to 5 a.m. channel. It's like, oh, dude.
Oh, man.
Get some sleep. I don't know what you're taking now, but man.
Right, yeah.
But no, I mean, but I think our class looked great because of what followed.
Right.
When we left, or when most of us left, that kind of core group in 07 got out, like the next 2 or 3 years were good. Like especially the next two.
Yeah.
I mean, Jacob stepped up. He started doing like some really good work.
Oh my gosh, I saw Domestic Tranquility. And
was that the one where he was a robber?
Yes, him and Jeff Putoff, and then Sam Salary.
They were awesome.
That was such a good show. That was one of my favorite shows that Eric's done. And actually, he uses that in his online Intro to Theater class. That
he should.
Yeah, well, him and I have kind of switched off on teaching that online Intro to Theater class. But anyway, he has a video that he has made and gone through, and he references Domestic Tranquility. He has the class read it as a whole and do character break. I mean, it's a really cool way that he's like put it all together. But I mean, honestly, it was like one of the best shows that I've seen him do, hands down. It was so good.
Yeah.
And one of the best things I've seen Busick do.
Yeah. He was incredible. And I remember going up to him after the show and was like, that's the best I've ever seen you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was spot on, perfect.
God, it was so good. And the research that he did into that role, I remember him talking about it and Eric talking about it. I was like, man, I am so proud of you.
Yeah.
I just get proud of my friends.
I
am self-proclaimed. I feel like I'm sometimes like a little too intense about the support of my friends, because I feel like I maybe I'm coming off a little too strong, but dang it, I just love you so much, all of you, and I just want you to do well, and so I want to celebrate all of your successes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of an intense friend, and so I friend very intensely. I say, so
that's awesome.
Yeah. So when he did well, I was like, oh, you're amazing. I probably, and it's not fake. I'm not like trying to go over the top and whatever, but I am like just truly and intensely proud of you, and I will support anything that you do, you know, sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool to see that. It was cool to see that next group kind of step up and do everything that they did. I mean, it was just a fun, like, that period of years was just really ridiculously fun. I mean,
it was.
Going through the shows that we did, some of the shoe incident.
The infamous shoe.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Eric and I we deflected on that conversation, but anybody that knows it, we had an incident where somebody that shouldn't have been in that position threw a shoe at an actor, and it was the weirdest phone call I think I've ever had to make. Because I remember it was like you and Roxanne, because like my girlfriend at the time wasn't there, but it was like you, me, and Roxanne, which, not that we didn't hang out, but normally there was all kinds of other people, but because we were in that show, we like grabbed McDonald's, grabbed drinks, came back to my place before anybody else got there, because everybody was like studying or whatever, and we're just sitting there talking about it. And I just remember like, I just have to call him. And I remember calling him at like 9:30 at night. Like, I don't want to be the one to do this, but you and I need to meet.
We need to talk
about
this.
So we met like the next, and he's like, well, what do you mean? And I didn't tell him exactly, but I told him enough.
Yeah.
And then the best part about that whole situation is that do you remember the following rehearsal? Because that was a Friday rehearsal.
And so it was Monday.
Do you remember she got in my face and was yelling at me?
I do.
Yeah.
That was, because we were like, because we knew that you had talked to Eric.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that he did that. I don't, and so, because we didn't know what to do. Because we're like, this doesn't feel appropriate.
No.
Like, this doesn't seem like a professional thing.
You're not going to assault somebody with an object.
Right. And here's the thing. Like, even if it was even if it wasn't like an intentional, I am going to hurt you, and it's still just throwing a shoe in someone's direction, but you were frustrated when you threw it, and it was all of that stuff behind it. So no, you didn't chuck it at 90 miles an hour, but that's not how you treat people, because it was I was sitting next to Chris Clark, I think.
Yeah, which was the target.
Yes, because he was like sitting in the rocking chair, and I was sitting down like in the seat next to it or whatever. And then threw it, and I was like, "Go!" We're all like freaked out.
Slammed. Yeah, she just had bad aim.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then were all like, "Okay," but really, in retrospect, I'm really proud that you followed through and reported it, because because I mean, really, especially in 2019, how big that would go on social media, like and this is harassment, this is a thing.
She would have been gone.
And so but no, I'm glad that you said something, because really that's wrong. You shouldn't do it. I have never, and again, maybe it's just my temperament, but I've never gotten so mad at students about something that I've thrown something at them. Yeah. I have cried because I've been disappointed, which the Be More Chill cast will talk about the, they're like,
the infamous moment.
Yeah, they're like, what the disappointed mom moment, I think is what they called it, because there, and it happens with a lot of shows, but I hadn't had it happen to at least this extent in a while. We were on such a good streak, and I was like, if this is where we are at this point in the rehearsal, this show is going to be incredible. And I was just like, waiting for the other shoe to drop, the other shoe to be chucked.
in your direction.
Yes.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was bad. So I was like, but they just, people were not showing up to, so backing up a little bit, we would have a 30-minute workout thing that was voluntary, but I was like, I highly encourage you to show up to this, because we need to get our cardio going, because this is a musical and it's a very high energy show, and you are constantly moving. So, you should show up. If you're not, I am going to be trusting you to be doing things on your own outside of this. And to their credit, a lot of students who didn't necessarily like the kind of workout things we were doing would go play basketball or go do this or
do
whatever.
Something.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's fine. Just be moving.
Yeah.
That's what's going to help. So anyway, then warm-ups would start at like 5:45 or whatever, or 5:50. And you would need to be there for warm-ups because 6 o'clock we start. Like I'm like, I drive an hour. I am regimented. I'm not going to stay late because you were lazy, but I will to prove a point.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But it was just kind of getting to a point where, oh, sorry, I was getting food and I wasn't, well, I'm hungry. I didn't have a chance to eat. I'm like, you did. You don't have class until 5 and then doing the workouts and then moving to that. If you did, I would be like, okay, you don't have class till 5. You weren't at the workout. And then, oh, you need food now. That's just like one small example. There were several things that people kind of starting to show up late.
You can make excuses. Don't lie to me.
Right. And you're not, like, you should have your lines memorized, and then you're fumbling a whole bunch, and then you're not focused, and I get joking around. I love joking around, but, like, when we need to be serious, we need to be serious. Like, there's a line. And so there was a lot of that stuff that was becoming like, meh. And then I was just like, I stopped taking notes. I was like, no, okay. And then once they're like, do you want us to do it again? I go, nah, let's gather down here. Like, okay. And they sat down. They're like, okay, like
everything's going to be great.
Yeah, because everything had been great. And then I just like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. And they all went, you saw their faces drop, and this wasn't like a play or a tactic or anything. This was all honestly how I felt in the moment. I was like, I was so excited about the show, and now I'm terrified that this is not going to be very good, because this is happening, I've talked about this, we've talked about this, and this, and just kind of went through. And then, of course, me as the crier, I could not contain it anymore, and it was really, and the kicker of what made me cry was, I am away from my child 5 days a week. I don't get to put him to bed.
Yeah.
For 5 days during the week. I miss him terribly. When I leave for work, he's still asleep. I don't get to see my child awake unless someone sends me a video of him. And so I was like, I am making this sacrifice because I love theater and I love you guys and I believe in you, but what's the point?
Yeah.
If we're not going to do this, and of course that's when, I talk about my son, I'm starting to cry, and so I was just like, like, okay, just
get
go,
out of here.
Just go, it's fine, and so, but what was really heartwarming was one of the students was like, it's not you, it's us, I'm so sorry, and then can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, sure, so we go out in the hallway and we're talking. I'm like, okay, well then, we gotta, let's get this going, let's see, and then I come back in, and then another student's like, hey, I was waiting until you're done talking with that person, but I just wanted to say this. And then I had like another one, and then I had like these groups coming up, and I was like, this is why I love you guys. Because I mean, and everyone's hearts were in the right place.
Yeah.
They
just didn't know.
Yeah, and you get distracted, and I feel like I create a pretty like fun kind of relaxed environment. Yeah. So, and I know that sometimes gets confused with the hard work that we are doing, and so sometimes it kind of leans a little far, and so, but what I think is like so awesome about these kids in particular is like that moment happened and they're like, okay, we're not gonna do that again. I'm so sorry, I didn't want to make you cry. And I was like, it's okay. Just don't do it again. And so, but I felt like, again, that's one of those bonding moments that you get with those theater students that you don't get with anyone else, because you are literally, I was like, I see you guys more than I see my own family. Like, you are my family right now, and I care so much about your success. I just want you to be successful. I promise you, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I've done this. I don't want to say like I'm a professional. I've done this for so long, but I'm like, I've
But
been
I
around the
have.
block.
Yeah.
I've been around the block. I have a lot of student debt to show for it. So, and so, but I mean, it was really after
When I started
that.
doing this, you were 4.
Oh, you want to hear something funny? I had a student and mom come in, and she was registering for classes, and somehow we got on the subject of theater. I think she may have mentioned it, or her mom mentioned it, or something. And I was like, yeah, well, let's get going, And anyway, her mom goes, it'll be, because I was talking about the arts barbecue and everything, and she goes, it'd be interesting to see Eric again. She goes, I was a student here when he first started at State Fair. I go, oh, 2000? She goes, yeah. In 2000, I was here when he was when he had just started us in his public speaking class. She goes, I was pregnant with her. I go, you need to tell him, but you need to wait until I'm there and I want to watch his face because now this year he's retiring and her daughter is starting State Fair. And so it's been...
My God, worlds collide.
I know. Isn't that so weird? I was like, that is so crazy. She was pregnant with her when he first started. She's starting college here when he's retiring.
Oh, man.
That's just
That's
such
insane.
a weird, roundabout world. I was like...
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But I was like, yeah,
crazy.
He's going to feel super old. I want to be there and see his
Like
face.
just
I know this piece of information, and you don't. Unless he listens to the podcast, and then I'll ruin it for him. I won't get to see his face. It's fine. It's fine.
You'll still get to see his face, and he's like, oh, that's right.
Oh,
shit.
Gosh. That's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I talked about this with Eric on his podcast. I remember Eric going off. I remember all of my directors having their moment where it just there was always the one. And I think with Little Shop there were 2 times because of the situation that you and I know about.
Yeah.
But I never got mad at directors for doing that. And all of mine, mine didn't do the crying thing. Mine always blew up, just screamed or yelled.
I can't help it. That's Eric and Tim can yell. I'm not gonna. I don't, and I realize I don't ever yell, but I kind of implode and I cry. But it's only.
But it gets the message across.
But it gets the message across. Yeah. I had a student that goes, you know what, Tim and Eric yell, and that's not good. But he goes, I can't have you be disappointed in me. You're crying. It's really bothering me. I was like, it's okay, man. I was like, well, as long as you don't do it again. He's like, I won't, I promise. So I'm like, maybe it's more effective.
Yeah, maybe.
Again, not my intention. It wasn't a tactic. It just happened. But
no, but it does. I mean, you've got so much, not only are you doing classes, but you're directing a show. You're away from your family. It's a ton of hours. And students don't see, and
all
this is just true of actors, but you don't see what the director's doing behind the scenes. And not only are you a director, you're really a producer or director.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're all sides.
You are the coordinator of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you're directing the show, and wouldn't it be nice just to be able to direct the show and work with the actors? But no,
punch that time clock.
Right. It's like, oh, hey, I'm talking to marketing. I'm talking to Tim about sets and lights. I'm talking to Kim about costumes. I'm talking, to Tiffany about box office stuff. And hey, what's the dinner theater stuff going to be like?
Yeah.
And all these decisions need to be made. And so you're doing all this, and really being a director is more of a producer, a delegator of things, and just trying to make sure that your ideas go across in this tiny part are rehearsals.
Exactly.
So.
Well, and you're rehearsing with 18 and 19-year-olds, a lot of whom are raw, a lot of whom haven't, been in that kind of regulated environment.
Which I find really fun. I think that's why I like this level so much, is because everyone coming in, no matter your level of experience, you're going to be raw and not quite grasp certain things. So it's almost like teaching a class while you're doing that, because you do have to teach what upstage and downstage means to some people. You need to teach what cheating out means, and projecting voice, and things that I think kind of keep you humble. Because it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I know this, but that's because I went through this exact same process so long ago. And so I'm like, yes, okay, gotta step back. And that's okay. Yeah, I love it.
That was the #1 note that I got when I went to International Thespian Festival and then the Missouri State Thespian Festival. Was like, I did the monologue, the 2 monologues, dramatic, comedic, and both, every single note was lots of potential raw, And so when I was initially going to college,
how can I not be raw?
Yeah, I don't like raw. Raw's bad. Boo raw. But I kept but that was one of the reasons that I wanted to go to State Fair. Was I looked at MSU and they were like, here's our theater, and it's a large theater, but it's not as nice, or at least it wasn't at the time. I don't know if they've redone anything or
I
not,
have no
but
idea.
it was like beautiful campus, 4-year college. That's great. But I was talking to their director, and I'm just kind of looking. I'm like, every single part of his language was basically like, our juniors and seniors are the ones that are the stars. And then I go with Eric, and it's like, you have 2 years to, potentially be in every play.
Yeah.
Like, behind the scenes or on stage, and he knew where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But it was one of those, like, yeah, you're new, and we just had a huge class leave. So there's a void. And it was like, so I can work with a director who knows what he's doing in a nice theater and have the potential to be in plays.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good sell.
Oh, darn.
Darn
I don't
it.
know what my decision will be.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like talking about like recruiting, Eric, okay, so my high school, my junior year, after my junior year, our theater teacher retired. And so then we had our, I think she was, I don't think she was a high school counselor, but she was like, middle school counselor, something like that, But anyway, she played the piano like when we did Wizard of Oz, and things like that. And so then she stepped in to that theater director role for us. And so anyway, from there, we went from having after school rehearsals to morning rehearsals, because so many of us were in, again, small school, were involved in everything. There was FFA, FCCLA, FBLA, then there's also all the sports, basketball, baseball, football, because, so there's all these things, and everyone's involved in everything. And so it was like, well, what's the time that most people are available? The morning. Even though FFA, we still had like contest practice stuff in the morning sometimes. But we just had to kind of work around that. So anyway, we'd rehearse at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my God.
Which now, like, even then I thought was awful, but I could like handle it because I was used to it better. But then like once I got to college, I was like, man, how did I even do that? But anyway, like, for the grace of God, Eric came and watched one of our morning rehearsals because he wasn't able to make the performance. And Teresa Mayberry is her name. She contacted Eric and was like, hey, I have some kids who are interested in theater. I think they would be very interested in the school. She didn't know anything really about them other than there was a theater program, and it was kind of close, and it was a smaller school and not MSU. And so she invited him. He came. He sat there and watched this. Oh, it must have been rough. It was a Carol Burnett variety show that we had like these different script things put together, and
if he had a brick wall, he'd just be beating his head against.
Well, I mean, he had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to like get awake and shower and get coffee and drive down to Urbana, Missouri, and watch this thing. And I'm sure, I'm sure it was not good. There may have been like a couple moments like, oh, that's kind of funny, but I'm sure it wasn't good. And so, but he talked to us afterwards, and he, had kind of recruited, like Jesse and myself, and anyone else who was kind of interested, but we were the main ones. And so then he invited us to come up and audition with a monologue, or a couple monologues. And so I remember like not knowing where to go to find a monologue. I had no idea, like that, because I mean, again, we weren't trained in that. We didn't have like a theater, like our Mr. Mackey was our theater teacher, but that wasn't what we did.
Right.
And so, I mean, I can't blame him for that or anything, but it's just not what. So, I mean, the early stages of the internet, so I'm like looking through and like, oh, I think this is a monologue. Like, I have no idea even what I did, but I was memorizing it in the van ride up to State Fair.
Oh my God.
And so, well, no, I had most of it down. I was just like, because me, I'm like an overthinker, so I'm going and I'm thinking I don't have it memorized, but I did.
Oh yeah.
Jesse, I love you, Jesse, but Jesse was the one memorizing it on the way up, like fully. And so like we're both running it through, and we audition. And again, I'm sure my audition was awful. But I did it, and Tim and Eric were like, well, pity scholarship. I'm sure that's, well, we'll see. She seems like a hard worker, and like Jesse.
Always what you want to hear.
Right,
You're like,
right.
fuck,
I'm like,
okay.
well, if I'm,
I'll take the money. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll take the money. If anything, I am always going to be the hard worker, So you know, they've never said that to me. I'm sure they thought it. So but you know, I feel like I'm someone who's maybe not as impressive on the front end, but like, give me some time to prove myself and I will be that person. But, so yeah, I'm sure it wasn't good, but then like, that's how I came into it. So I came into theater completely opposite, thinking I am awful. I'm horrible. I'm sure I'm not doing anything right. Like, come teach me.
Yeah.
Which is why.
Which is also awesome to be able to have somebody that's like, teach me.
Yeah. But, you know, then it was like against people who were like, I'm the shit. you know, and so then I didn't know, you know, like, are they really? I have no idea. I had no perspective, you know. And so, you know, but I just think, you know, like, Eric is the reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Yep.
Whether he wants me to be or not, you know, like, but, I mean, he is the reason why I'm here. I'm so thankful for it. And like, you know, Ron Winiger was kind of like the father of SFCC theater here for such a long time. And Eric's been here for a long time. And so, I mean, I would love to continue that tradition, because for the love of God, I'm not leaving. I will have to die, or you're gonna have to fire me, which hopefully should not ever happen. You know, but like I will be. I'm a very loyal person. You know, if you show me some kindness and you know that I can't think of the right word, but basically
faith in me, I'll have faith in you.
Yeah, you know, and you respect the work and time I put in, and vice versa. I'll do the same thing for you. Like, I will be loyal for life. I'm like, you know, and so but I want to be there for that. You know, like, that is my dream. And really, it's like, if I don't do this, I honest to God have no idea what I'm going to do. I really have no idea. Yeah. You know.
Well, I still think the continuity aspect is such a huge thing, because you've worked with Eric, you've worked under Eric. I mean, you've been there, you've done that, you know the systems now. It'd be a real easy transition. Yeah. Well, and I'm not talking out of my ass either. I mean, I really when Eric was telling me about this, even before we started, you know, the start of the podcast, I was like, I think that'd be perfect, because again, continuity is everything. And also being able to, you know, call the person that was there before, like Eric has called Winiger so many times.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know, when you have that ability to call the person that knows the system, that appreciates you, appreciates what you're trying to do. But the number one thing that I would value with you over most people is the fact that, like you just said, it's like, you're not trying out for a position. You want to be here. It's like, yeah, I know I'm going to have to sell you on me being here. But at the same time, you're not talking to somebody that's just trying to do it for a paycheck or trying to move up in the world. It's like, you're doing it for somebody who's coming home.
5 years. I'm not using State Fair Community College as a stepping stone to get a quote-unquote better job somewhere else. Like,
this is my job.
This is my job. This is literally the thing I've wanted to do for 15 years. Yeah. You know, like, there's nothing, you know, and I think if anything, you know, I don't know what else I would have to do to put myself in any better position, because like I said, if I have been crafting and making choices to do specific things all leading up to this. So if I don't get it, you know, I don't feel like that's on me.
Right.
you know? Or maybe it is, and I made a poor choice later, like earlier on, that I could not rectify. You know, or maybe it's you know, someone else was just so impressive to someone up higher in the administration that they're like, you know what, we are really going to fight for this other person. And you know, so I mean, I don't know, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very exciting and stressful year, but also, you know, I mean, that's kind of why I chose Mr. Burns, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out big. You know, so we'll see what happens. But that's, I mean, it's the job I've always wanted. Yeah. You know, and I don't think that anyone else interviewing for that position will say, man, I've always wanted a job at State Fair Community College being the theater program coordinator. Kind of think I'm one of the only applicants that is going to have that.
Yeah. I think you're probably one of the only applicants, if not the only applicant, that's going to, one, that's obviously your dream job. That's what you want to do. But I mean, to me, and again, it's just, to me, the more important issue is you've been around it. You know,
Right.
the godfather of theater for you was Eric Gazel.
Right.
I mean, like somebody
Super
who
Godfather.
exactly.
Ron Winokur.
Yeah. But I mean, when you look at it, it's like, Ron established the program, made it what it was, grew it to a point. Eric took it over and was a rock star out of the gate, but has continued to do that for 19 years.
And has really built up the program and got a really solid foundation.
Yeah.
He started and has really maintained the children's theater, which I think is so essential.
Yeah.
To to theater education in general. That's how you get audience members.
Well, and eventually that might be how you get, students.
We've had some students that have come in like, oh, I was teaching intro to theater a few years ago, and like, we're talking about different things, different shows, and he said, oh yeah, my first theater show I saw was at State Fair. It was actually, he goes, oh, it was with. It was like a stinky cheese man.
Oh,
I said,
geez.
"Oh no! That was another student." But the other student, his first show was the Sam Stokes show that we were in.
Humpty Dumpty Mystery.
Yes,
Yep.
It's like it was a Humpty Dumpty Mystery. And I said, "Are you serious?" I was in that. And he goes, "What?" And so it was just like one of those moments, like now that kid's.
And I know the big dumb idiot that played the dog.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you love that guy. Yeah. No, but I was like, oh man, it was just such a surreal moment to think like you're taking this intro to theater class because you were interested in theater because your first show started with this.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure his school continued to come to like the next ones, up to the certain point. But I mean, his love of, or at least his interest in theater came from us.
Yeah.
And that's why he was taking a class in theater, because he was interested a little bit more. So again, just because we're not necessarily producing actors and designers and technicians, we're helping produce audience members.
Yeah.
And that's really almost more important, is cultivating people who are willing to go see a piece of theater.
Yeah.
I equivocate. I don't know if that's the right word.
Equate it to?
Equate it. There we go. To theater, to like shopping local. People are like, support your small businesses. I'm like, support your local theater. Because I mean, you're putting money directly into something that's benefiting something else. If you go see a movie, no one locally, unless it's like the movie theater, is really benefiting from that. But if you pay money to go see a show, you're supporting a friend, you're supporting the arts, you're supporting someone's education in this, and and their experience in it is growing so much more than your $10 ticket to a movie theater. So I'm like, if you're so worried about wanting to support local businesses, come support your local theater.
And you also get to see a show.
Yeah, I mean, literally, like you are doing so much more for your local economy by coming and seeing theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the word that you've touched on several times, we talk about theater as if it's, all about theater, but I think the biggest positive that I see with everything that has been built up and hopefully gets passed to you, because I think this would be the area where I think you would be a treasure for that department, but is the education part of it too. Because you've been in that small town wanting to do theater, and you didn't have like, the background, like when, I didn't want to sound like a dick in any way, shape, or form, but like, when I came from Ray Peck, like, you
guys had an incredible theater.
We had an incredible theater program, and Mr. Beam built that up, and then Todd Schnocky took it over, and like, I mean, when I had a monologue, they worked me like a dog getting that thing right, so that when I went to the International Thespian Festival and stuff like that,
and
I had
saw
it
you
down.
And it's like, hey.
Yeah, and I mean, we had production volume. I mean, we didn't have the football team money that was winning state championships, but they definitely recognized like this is a program we need to have well funded.
That's fantastic.
But they, and I think they would probably say, not as well funded as you think.
Right. We faked it really well.
We faked it really well, yeah. But I mean, we had great productions, we had a great team, and because of that we had, a lot of actors that were able to like feel comfortable doing that. And I fucking stepped into the perfect situation. Like the year before I started, the guy who was the quote unquote leading man graduated.
Awesome.
Perfect for Alex.
Yeah. Filling a role very much needed. Yeah.
So I walked into that, and I mean, I've said it before on the podcast, but it's like, Mr. Beam was going to do, now I can't think of what it was, but And then, it was like, are you going to be in the show? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm probably going to do it because my shoulder's shot. And he was like, okay. And then, like, the next week it was Guys and Dolls. And so I got Sky Masterson and, then eventually was in all of his shows and did all kinds of stuff. And it was awesome. So, like, when Eric came to see us, like, we had everything kind of rocking and rolling. But high school is very different because even though we had, like, the schedule and the budget and all the stuff going on, it's still high school.
Right.
Like, one of the biggest compliment I can give to Eric, I have two. One is that he pretty much saved my life because I was going through a really bad period of time. When I was at State Fair, I tried to commit suicide.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was just real rough for a while. So he saved my life without question because he put me in a direction and was like, fucking swim that way or else and don't look back.
Right.
But the other thing is, in that particular role, in that community college role, especially a community college where you're kind of on your own for the first time and you're doing theater and you have a full plate of classes.
They're so busy.
You're so busy. It's so incredibly taxing, and you're on your own, and hormones and relationships, and you're in theater, so your emotions are going wild all the time.
Right.
But the biggest compliment I can give him as a director is something that I think you will excel at without question, and that is the balance of talking to somebody like a student, which is how you have to handle all high school,
right,
and being able to pull that individual aside and talking to them as an adult.
Yes.
Because in that environment, you're not in high school, they're not going home and spending the night with their parents. They're going home by themselves.
Right.
And you have to have that great balance of, hey, you and I need to talk as two adults talking to each other for a minute. Now go home, get a good night's sleep, and then come back and I'll talk to you as a student. But knowing when to see that. And Eric's really, a ninja.
Yeah,
he's
good at that.
Perfect at it.
Yes.
And again, like I think, he would probably say like, well, I'm not, there are certain situations that I don't see. It's like,
Or maybe I messed up here or shouldn't have said that necessarily here. But we all do that.
Exactly. Well, and you're still human, but when
you're still learning from your experiences. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where I think that, I guess probably the best word is empathizing with somebody. I think that's where Eric absolutely excelled, and I think that's where you'll be able to kind of take that plate to be able to say, like, yeah, you have to be a professional. This is not high school. You have to be more professional in that it is up to you more than ever. But I also realize that you're 19.
Right.
And you don't have your parent, 2 steps
and
away.
Part of that balance also is like, not saying, hey, I know you're 19 years old. Because, no one...
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, because then you just, like, shut the person off right there. But I feel like I've gotten better at those conversations over the years, too. And part of it, I think, is separating myself in age. Because when I first started teaching at State Fair and directing, I was... Let me see. I graduated from UCM when I was 23... 25. I think I was just turning 26.
Oh, okay.
So I was still pretty young when I started. And so 26, and then I have some 18-year-old students, but then I also have some students who are like 22.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I feel like I would have gone to school with you and have been friends with you. And so it was really weird because I thought, who am I to tell you what to do, or who am I to educate you in this? Like, you probably already know. And of course they didn't know, but I just, again, it's like that confidence of I didn't think that I knew more than other people. And then once I realized I do, but not in like, I know more than you, but like, okay, yeah, well, my training was valuable.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, and then finding ways to deliver that. And it took me a good amount of time to have those hard discussions.
Yeah.
And especially like one-on-one things. Like I was like, I don't know, because it felt like I was too close in age. And so I think the benefit of getting older, and they rotate and stay about the same age as I'm like, okay, I have enough separation. Sometimes I feel like I'm 24, and then I realize when I hear conversations that I'm not 24. And I'm like, okay, all right, and so, but I feel like I also am able to relate to that age group for the most part pretty well. But yeah, having those hard conversations, it was tough for me because, no one likes confrontation, and I don't, but once I realized it was not me telling someone how they're wrong, when I realized that it was me helping someone figure something out and do something that's in a more productive manner. Or, I don't know if you realize this, but you need to know this. Otherwise, you will not be cast in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that if you don't have if you continue this behavior, it's harder to dig yourself out of it and improve yourself than it is to do it and continue growing.
Yeah, don't Lindsay Lohan yourself.
Exactly. Come on, don't Lindsay Lohan yourself. That's another one I'll probably try to start using. So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is a very important role, and it's at such an impressionable time.
Yeah.
I mean, I keep saying it, and honestly, it's not derogatory. I don't mean it to be. But when somebody is that young, it's like you just don't know what you don't know.
No,
and
exactly.
I hated being told that. Like
Me too.
I'm ground zero for getting pissed off at those comments. But as you get older, and even a few years past that, you're like, oh my God, I seriously should have thought differently about that.
Right.
And me talking, obviously not going to be successful with that conversation, but you're going to be able to do that. And I think that's a very positive, and you've been able to do that since you were that age. I mean, you've always been a very mature individual.
I always felt like I was the mom of the group.
Yeah. Well, fuck with our group. We needed one.
Yeah. And even like when I went to UCM, like I remember a specific instance at UCM, like a theater kid group. We're sitting in the, I can't remember what the building's called. Elliott? I don't know. Anyway, we're sitting at a table eating food, and it was time to go to class. And one of my friends was like, I'm not going to go. I just don't want to. I want to stay, because we didn't have to go, but he had to go, and like someone else had to go. And he's like, I'm just not going to go. I go, I will say John. Okay, so John.
So John Doe.
Yeah. John Doe. Go to class. And he was like, oh, but I don't want to. Like, we're having so much fun. I said, I know, but you only get 3 absences before, like, that are freebies. And then I go, what if you get sick, or what if something happens and you don't have it? He's like, stop being a wet rag, Kristen. Oh man, I'm just well, what do you think happened? Down the line, he missed enough classes to where he ran out of his freebies, and then he actually did get sick. And then I don't understand why my instructors, or I guess their professors, not they're not letting me make up any work. That's bull. What did I tell you, John Doe? Yeah. Like, I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you. But it did. So, yeah. So that's why you don't waste those times. But things like that always made sense to me. I'm like, why would you not do this?
Yeah.
But not everyone is wired like that. And,
no.
And so
well, you always try to, even sometimes to your detriment, follow through on a task. Like, I think I might have talked about this on Eric's podcast too, but there was an algebra class that you and I enrolled in. Do you remember that one? And you were like crying throughout the semester.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember the first day you and I sat next to each other and we watched that old man. Like, he just wrote on the board and talked to himself and was like, that's what you need to learn, and left. Yeah. And I just immediately went. It was like, nope. I need to drop this class. I don't know what's here, but I've got to figure it out. And I dropped it.
And I didn't.
And you didn't. And I just remember, like, throughout the semester, like, I just catch you, like, crying after that class. I was like, oh, I feel so bad.
And you know what was stupid? Right. You know what was stupid on my part? I never sought out tutoring.
Oh, really?
You want to know why? Because I thought that was giving up, which is the stupidest thing
you can't do
ever. That was a young person thing. And now I am like such an advocate of obviously tutoring. And I didn't join Trio, which I qualified for, and I should have, because it's amazing. Like, they're right around the corner from my office, and I send everyone that might qualify apply, because like Trio will pay for your college transcripts to be sent to colleges that you applied to. Trio will pay for your college application fees. Trio will pay for your cap and gown at graduation. They will take you on these. And there's always food, and it's like the coolest thing. And I'm like, what was wrong with me?
Yeah.
Seriously, what was wrong with me? I didn't take it up. But yeah, I didn't go to tutoring. I got a D in college algebra. I barely passed, and I actually cried because I was so happy that I did not have to take it again. I was so terrified I was going to have to retake that class, and it was awful. But no, I should have dropped.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I should have dropped it, because at the time you could drop a class and then enroll in another class.
Yeah, as long as it was still
week.
in like 3 weeks or something like
first
that.
week.
First week, okay.
Yeah, and I should have done that, but I didn't.
I just remember we left and you were like, I'm worried. And I just remember like, I'm going to the office right now.
I'm not worried. I'm not going to be in there.
Yeah, I just knew it's like my brain is like the way that I execute a math problem is different than anybody else I've ever talked to. So I knew watching that guy, it's like, I've been in the situation before. I'm not going to make it. I will fail this class without question. And so that's why I left. And I remember telling you that, like, all you have to do is, you're like, well, no, I'm just going to stick it out and I'm sure it'll be fine. And it was okay.
To my detriment.
Yeah. Well, and I can't remember what class I ended up getting into, what algebra or who knows what I talked myself into or out of. Like that was half the... My wife gets mad at me when I talk about this, but I feel like that's half the reason that I graduated from college was that I had, like, I could talk to people.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I really apologize for not turning this in on time, but here it is. I completed the assignment. I wasn't able to do it, but I just want you to have it. If you want to grade it, fantastic. If not, great. Always would grade it.
Right. Because here's the thing. You put in the effort to complete it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I will do that as an instructor in most instances because especially if you completed it, and it's good. Yeah. But it was just late. And I'm like, I get life happens. You won't get full credit, but I'll still grade it.
Yeah, and at that point you're like, not full credit's completely fine.
Right. You're like, I didn't even know you'd accept it. And some instructors won't.
Yeah.
But but I feel one of my philosophies, I guess, is I want you to do the work and complete the work and think critically and have a good learning experience. I don't want to taint that by, hey, I got seriously sick and then couldn't do anything more or less for 2 weeks. Now it's not fair if I give you full credit like I gave everyone else, but I will still grade it if you're putting in the effort because you want to learn about it. Like I point at teaching these classes because I want you to learn.
Somebody should learn, yeah.
I'm excited about it. Yeah. I don't want you to be like, oh man, my theater instructor sucks because she didn't understand that that my father died.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and also, and the ones that come to you and do that kind of thing don't take advantage normally.
Right.
Like if you're doing that all the time, that's a very different scenario. But mine was, I had a psychology professor, and I woke up like the assignment was supposed to be done at midnight, and I did one of those 2 a.m. wake ups where I shot out of bed and realized I didn't turn it in, and I was halfway through it. It was just one of those like 2 or 3 or 4 hour rehearsal nights, and I just spaced it. Just wasn't anything I was trying to do. Would have absolutely come home and done it. I just completely spaced it, and so I shot up 2 a.m. and I think I stayed up until 5 doing it, and I turned it in the next day at 10. And I went up to her and I just sat it there, and I literally was just like, "If you don't want to take it, that's completely fine." And I told her my sob story, and she was like, "You get once." Like, okay, thank you.
I appreciate
it. Won't happen again. I promise you that. Not in this class.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I think, is it the psychology instructor like at State Fair?
Yeah.
Is that you're thinking of?
Yep. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but
Dr. Rhonda Frizzell.
That sounds right. Yep.
I
know. I know I had her.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's that class.
I had her too. It wasn't. I don't think it was this. I think I was by myself in that class, so we weren't taking the same one. But she's still there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was a great teacher. I just was one of those moments where I just literally went up to her and was like, "I'm just going to be honest with you." Like my young self, like, here it is.
Here's the thing. I would rather take your honesty. Don't give me some.
My dog ate my homework bullshit. Yeah.
Just be honest. I forgot. Okay. I appreciate you being up front.
Yep. Also, thanks for doing the work too.
Yeah. Okay. Shows that you care.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's 10% off though.
Yeah. Sorry. Bye. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So what? So the show that you're doing this year is
Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns.
A post-electric play.
A post-electric play, and that's going to be the October show?
October show. It's October 2nd through the 6th. Performances at 7:30, except for Sundays, which is obviously at 2.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Stoffaker Theater.
The Stoffaker Theater, the best theater ever.
Yes, it is.
I do love that place.
It's a good place. I love just walking in when it's like empty, no one's in
Yeah.
there. I just stand there and look. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is so cool.
Yeah. I used to walk in, and then I'd just kind of look around at the seats, and then I'd walk on stage, just because it's so easy to get to it.
Yeah.
It's like,
And you can't help it. You just like take a deep breath because you're just like just trying to take it all in and looking at it. And it looks so cool when the lights are dim and you're kind of looking out. And it's just such a cool, surreal moment. Like I get to just exist in this space for a little bit.
Yeah.
That's so neat.
Yeah. Then you go backstage and it's chaos.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
You are
this
welcome.
Was awesome.
Thank you for inviting me. I am so excited because this is obviously the first podcast or anything like that I've ever been on. So I'm like, this is cool. And it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've been talking for almost 3 hours,
Are
too.
you
So,
serious?
yeah.
Oh, my God.
2 hours and 2 hours and 57 minutes or so.
Holy cow. Well, if anyone's still listening at this point, I commend you. Let me know that you made it because you're going to be moving to the top of my MySpace.
Top 8.
Top 8, yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really like, and I've said this throughout, but I really think that, no matter what happens, I think that if what we hope will happen happens, I think you're the perfect person for it. I think of anybody that's been through it, that's been a part of it, that's committed themselves to it. Like, not only have you committed yourself to theater, but you've done everything that it's taken, like the communications degree. You've done everything that it's taken throughout the entire process to make sure that you put yourself in the best position possible. And I think that if you are able to take over for Eric, it's going to be really nice to have like 3 people within like a period of 70 years to run that program.
I mean, that would be cool to be a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The trifecta.
The trifecta. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.